Okay, welcome everybody. We got a nice crowd tonight. Welcome everybody. Welcome kids. There you go. Okay, so what we're going to do, first thing, we're going to go let Mr. Lesher do the prayer, and then we're going to stand for the presentation of the flag. If you don't mind standing.
Will you join me in prayer? Almighty God, our protector and guardian, make us ever grateful for the peace and prosperity we enjoy, and give us generous hearts for those who do not enjoy such security, whether our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, whose lives have been devastated by the Russian invasion, the Rohingya Muslims facing genocide in Myanmar, or the families in Mexico facing extortion or murder from drug lords, and all those who find themselves in peril or privation of basic needs. Make us faithful keepers of the least of these our brethren. Give us grateful hearts, too, for those who are saving lives in our community, particularly the nurses of the ICU, and for those who lift up those who are downtrodden and devalued in our society. Empower us to empower them to act with justice and equity for the betterment of our society. In your most holy name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Join me for the pledge.
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher. Okay, let's start tonight's agenda for March 22nd before us. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections?
I have two that I would like to bring.
Okay.
We would like to swap the place of item 11 with item 12 and just switch those.
Okay.
So we'll have the update on Connect Broadband just before the American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay.
And if we could, seeing the age of the audience, I thought it might be nice to bump the proclamation recognition of ICU nurses ahead of Dr. Maguire's presentation.
Which number is there? Oh, yep.
Okay, so we're going to swap them.
Yes.
Okay.
Just the one.
Okay. So there's a motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, we've got a motion and a second. Could you please call the roll?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Patrick?
All right.
Okay. Next is the minutes. Council has the minutes of February 22nd before us. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda
Minutes.
for the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, the chair moves that the agenda be accepted as unanimous consent.
Minutes.
Minutes, I'm sorry. Disbursements, okay, from March 15th and March 22nd. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions on the disbursements? Okay, hearing none, the chair moves that the disbursements be accepted as unanimous consent. Okay.
And now to the ICU.
Yep. Now to the people that take care of us, and we appreciate it, I can tell you that. All right, so up tonight are the nurses from the Shore Regional Health. Would you guys come on up? You could just, a couple of them can sit down and the other ones can be behind them. That'd be great. Hey there, how are you? So you got your troops behind you now. You're good. You're good. Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and read the proclamation, please?
Certificate of Recognition to ICU Nurses, University of Maryland Medical System, Shore Regional Health. Whereas nurses are a vital part of healthcare delivery systems around the world, by responding to emergencies, monitoring patients, administering medications, assisting patients with basic needs, and updating the progress of their patients. And whereas intensive care unit, ICU nurses are highly specialized trained nurses who have completed thousands of hours of clinical and/or additional educational requirements to provide care to patients who are extremely ill or injured who are fighting for their lives. And whereas, while all nurses must act quickly and remain calm to address patient needs, ICU nurses must do so often under extreme pressure in the face of catastrophic situations while managing multiple priorities. And whereas, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, all medical professionals, particularly ICU nurses, have gone above and beyond the circumstances for which they trained in order to provide care to the enormous number of patients hospitalized due to COVID-19, while also caring for patients hospitalized by other circumstances, putting their own lives and sometimes possibly the lives of their loved ones at risk in order to honor their commitment to their fellow human beings. Now, therefore, we, the County Council of Talbot County, do hereby recognize the months of dedication and sacrifice of the ICU nurses at University of Maryland Medical System, Shore Regional Health, to the Talbot County community to care for their neighbors, friends, loved ones, and total strangers. Given under our hands in the Great Seal of Talbot County, this 22nd day of March in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms. Satchel? First of all, congratulations on your new position. So, yep, so, you want to say a few words? Yep.
One of our docs has something prepared.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Dr. Amish?
Yeah, come on up. Welcome.
Hello, council members. I want to thank you first for allowing us to recognize these nurses.
Sure.
In the past 2 years, the COVID pandemic has been increasingly onerous to our healthcare system nationwide. This pandemic has exhausted our resources and challenged our will to fight. But in no small part to our nursing heroes, we have endured and beaten every surge of this pandemic. Since the intensive care unit takes care of many of the sickest patients in the hospital, the nurses in this unit are highly trained to work under pressure. Due to acuity of the patient's illnesses, the ICU nurses generally treat fewer number of patients per shift than other units in the hospital. However, each surge of the pandemic led to significant increase in the sheer number of critically ill patients that overwhelmed our hospital and especially our intensive care unit. The nurses in the ICU stepped up to this challenge and worked harder than ever before. Often the ICU resembled a war zone, with patients coding throughout the day while still other patients waited in the ER to be admitted to the ICU. Additionally, critical patients in other medical wards required the care of our critical care teams. Often we were understaffed, leading to working extended hours and taking care of more acutely ill patients than ever before. This is despite the nurses having their own families and children at their own home that also needed their help and their help and calming during these difficult times. It certainly takes a special person to take care of these critically ill patients who no longer have any control of their fate of their life, whilst consoling their families who were not able to see their loved ones in the ICU. These men and women are heroes. My partners and I are proud to join our county to honor them as heroes. As quoted by Christopher Reeve, a hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to preserve and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. So I'd like to congratulate them for being heroes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we've got
So moved.
yep.
Second.
Yeah, second. Okay, Madam Secretary, we got a motion and second to approve the proclamation. Please call the vote.
Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
All right.
Everybody come up front, I'm going to give you a proclamation. All our ones in the back.
I think so, yeah. Let's all stand. Yep. Yep.
We're witnessing some caregiving going on right as we speak.
Luann, we can't really see you. Okay. And face out. Focus on the end. Face out. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I think we have everybody. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Callahan, would it be appropriate for us to reflect on this just for a moment?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Lesher.
The COVID-19 pandemic, it impacted everybody, but those burdens fell on unevenly. And we are honoring tonight some of those people who bore those burdens most heavily. And I want to thank Dr. Altamishi for bringing this to my attention, and for all of those who we were honoring here tonight, those ICU nurses. Thank you for your service to this community. Really, you've been heroes, as Dr. Altamishi said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the Health Department, Dr. Maguire. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah?
And I'm glad they went before me because I love me some ICU nurses. They have
There
saved my
you
butt
go.
on several occasions.
Great, that's great.
So, good evening, President Callahan, council
Yep.
members, everyone. We have a great audience tonight, and I do finally bring some good news, Mr. Callahan.
Hey.
And it's wonderful to see your beautiful face.
And yeah, you're probably noticing that I'm not wearing a mask.
I see that.
Also really great news, right? So just to get started, I have branched out tonight and I wanted to give a more broader overview. Infectious disease update. I do have to talk a little bit about COVID, but a bit less so than previously. So tonight I wanted to hit on some issues we've been dealing with in the health department, including, of course, COVID, influenza this year, tuberculosis, a little bit of HIV, and then an avian flu situation that we're dealing with. So to get started, since I last spoke here in mid-January, that was probably actually the worst day of our Omicron surge. And ever since then, our cases of COVID in Talbot County have really come down quite a lot. So we can, very confidently say that that surge has ended. This graph gives us a view of the surges, the history of the surges that we dealt with, and it really underscores just how bad that Omicron surge was in January. It certainly put, as we just noted, a lot of stress on the hospital system. But the good news is we're out of that now, and we're in a different place. This is just a close-up graph of the case rate since over the past 2 months, just showing that very, very steady decline in the new cases that we at the health department are aware of. And along with that, we've seen our testing positivity decline. And I just wanted to point out that during that Omicron peak, we were seeing almost 30% of our tests in Talbot County come back positive for COVID. And right now, today, we're seeing only about 3% of tests. And across Maryland, it's actually lower than that. It's been in the 1% to 2% range over the past few weeks, which is really excellent. The good news is that now we're seeing testing be more widely available. It's always when we have these surges that there's, less availability of testing. But now we do have more testing available. We have at-home tests available. We've been distributing them to the libraries, to other community venues. So if people are feeling sick, if they need to travel, get a pre-op, they have a need for a pre-op test, then they should be able to obtain a test. And we are still operating our health department testing site 5 days a week, even though they're not terribly busy right now. We'll still continue to operate them for the next several months. And then I just wanted to look at the deaths that occurred in Talbot County since the beginning of the pandemic. So really, even though the Omicron surge, which occurred, I'm just hovering over when that occurred in this January timeframe, it wasn't, we did have about 20 more deaths during that surge, but it wasn't quite as steep of an increase in deaths as last January, which was what happened here. These numbers are just the cumulative numbers of deaths that we saw in Talbot County. The deaths do always lag, but we are starting to see that really stop from, resulting from the Omicron surge. When we look at who unfortunately died due to COVID, this is the age breakdown. Fortunately, no one under 20 in the county, and this is cumulative from the way beginning of the pandemic. And we do see the predominance of seniors, so the 60, 70, 80, and even 90-year-old range. We also did some analysis that showed that in almost 20% of individuals who died of COVID, the primary cause was actually heart issues. I'm going to touch a little bit on some of these secondary issues that we're seeing with COVID. And so
Can I ask
that's,
a-
please.
No, just a question. You have 86 total, but when you look at your bar chart, it's way more than that. You've got, just the 70 and up, you've got 50 and 35 and 20-some, and that's over 100, so. That a
You
little
know
bit
what?
off?
That is correct. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The scale must be wrong on that. But yeah, no, it is correct that the cumulative number is 86. The proportion should be correct, though, so I can send in
Yeah, that'd be
a
great.
corrected
Thank
version
you.
if needed. Yeah, sorry about that. Sometimes you don't catch these things when you're deep into them. So I've been getting some questions about, what's the future going to hold for COVID? Are we still in an epidemic, pandemic state? What's this BA2 variant? I think I've mentioned the BA2 variant on some of our EOC calls. So basically, that's a subvariant of what we saw in Omicron, and that's actually accounting for 35% of new COVID cases in the U.S. over the past week. So it is taking a greater share of cases, but just keep in mind that the overall prevalence of new cases of COVID is way, way, way down. And should we care? Should we be worried whenever there's a new variant? Well, this one is a bit more infectious, more contagious than the Omicron one, and we saw that in other countries like Denmark and the UK, where they're seeing quite a lot of cases. But it does not appear to be more severe, and so importantly, that means that we shouldn't hopefully see as much demand on our systems as we saw in January. And fortunately, a result of having so many people having gotten infected in January is that we do have more immunity from that natural infection, as well as so many people who've gotten vaccinated. So we're hoping that that does offer some protection. We do anticipate there will be some future surges, but we're hoping that they're much smaller and more manageable. And the good news is that now we have some newer guidelines that the CDC released at the end of February. And so I used to talk about the transmission level and how that sort of determined how risky things were in Talbot County in Maryland. They have changed how they determine and define risk for locations. And basically, instead of just looking at how many cases are there, they're now combining how many cases plus what your hospitalization rate is. And so that helps add kind of a level of, how severe is it? Because in a sense, while we don't want a huge amount of COVID, if we're not having a lot of stress on our systems, then that's a better thing than having a lot of people hospitalized. So the new risk indicator from the CDC does take into account these two metrics, and then from that emerges one of three levels. And I apologize for this being kind of small text, but all I wanted really to show here was that when this new this new risk assessment took effect at the end of February, about only 30% of the population was in what we call low level. Most of Maryland was actually in low level at that time. And then since then, just over the past not even month, more than 99% of the U.S. is in a location with low or medium risk level. And right now, actually, all of Maryland, so all 24 jurisdictions in Maryland are in low level. So what does that actually mean? So again, it has to do with how many cases are happening as well as how many hospitalizations. Fortunately, we haven't had a new Talbot resident hospitalized since, I believe, March 6th, so our hospital level is really low for our population. So basically, the recommendations are if you're in a low level, so that's the green, then you should get vaccinated and boosted and follow those recommendations. If you're sick and there's a chance you are exposed to COVID, get tested, and you may choose to wear a mask if you want to. But there's not a general recommendation for mask wearing as there are in other risk levels. When you're in the yellow, which is medium, again, get vaccinated, get tested when you need to. But if you're at increased risk or potentially you could get really sick from COVID, that's when you should talk to your healthcare provider about wearing a mask in more places. So people who are immunosuppressed, who are have increased risk factors. So it's a more targeted recommendation. And then in the high level, that, again, they recommend getting vaccinated, staying up to date with that, getting tested if you're sick, and that's when they go back to recommending mask wearing for the general population in indoor settings. There are still requirements now to continue to wear a mask in certain settings, so that involves travel. So if you're on an airplane, you're going to have to wear a mask. If you're in a healthcare setting, like at the doctor or in a hospital, but we'll see if that requirement changes over time as well. And again, if you're traveling internationally, you will probably need to get tested in order to arrive at your destination. And then when you return to the U.S., you do need a test within 24 hours in order to board your plane. So currently, there are no COVID outbreaks in Talbot County. Usually, we were having several in different locations, including schools, but right now all of our outbreaks have closed. There is actually an outbreak we're following in a school, but it's related to the GI bug. And I think that's probably a result of when we eliminated the requirement for masks. Now kids are sharing kind of the more normal diseases, such as, the vomiting ones. So, kids will always I'm calling it that they're catching up on, their illnesses that they were behind on. And, I have a 6-year-old and she has been catching up. So, why this refocusing on monitoring, surveilling COVID in communities? Well, they're shifting from just looking at numbers to looking at the impact on the community. And this is due to the fact that we've got a lot of people vaccinated, a lot of people have had infection-induced protection, and now there is broad access to not only vaccines, but also therapeutics and testing. And I'll get into therapeutics in a little bit. And just as a reminder, if you are sick with COVID, because we do still have a few cases coming up here and there, it is recommended that you do continue to isolate for 5 days at home, stay home from work, don't try to spread it to other people, and then after that 5 days, you really should wear a mask when you're in public settings, not to spread it to other people. So continuing on, there are now some therapeutics, some treatments for COVID on the market, and they are becoming a bit more available than they had been. So previously, we only really had, things like monoclonal antibodies. These are given in the vein. You have to go a special place. They're really for higher risk people. But now we do have a pill available. And then there's also even an injection meant for people as sort of a preventive measure. So those are for people who are super high risk. So just to very quickly go over this, monoclonal antibodies, that's basically antibodies that, similar to what you would develop from, vaccination, but we give it to you in your veins, and that helps keep your infection from worsening. And so that's for people who are really at high risk of severe disease. The pill, there's two. Paxlovid is one, molnupiravir are another. Those are available at some pharmacies. I believe in Talbot County they're available at 2 pharmacies. And so that's a prescription you need from your doctor. And then this Evusheld, this is the injection that is meant for very high-risk individuals. It's not available in Talbot County, so your doctor has to refer you to a certain center. But these are some therapeutics that will help prevent, additional deaths, will help prevent the, demand on the hospital system, keep people hopefully at home. So, our recommendation is if you're sick, especially if you're at high risk of severe illness, definitely call your doctor because there are things out there that can help you. And if someone is on the list of, if they're, board certified in, if they have a license in Maryland, so a physician, they get a weekly therapeutics email. So your physician should be aware of these and know about these, and have information on how to refer you. I want to quickly just touch on something I don't believe I've touched on before, which is some of the long-term considerations that we've seen come out in research about COVID. So a lot of people have heard about long COVID, how some people have these, prolonged symptoms and just can't get over COVID. But we've also noticed in some studies that we're seeing increased risk of some heart issues like strokes, rhythm, heart inflammation such as myocarditis and pericarditis are 2 of those types. Heart failure where the heart doesn't pump effectively, and also heart attack. And so these, some studies have shown that these issues occurred in individuals sometimes who weren't even really that severely sick. They weren't hospitalized. So this is something we need to definitely follow with, studies to see what the effect is long term. And then, again, the long COVID, this is where you have fatigue, shortness of breath, you have that brain fog, sometimes for months. And we have seen that it's less likely to occur in vaccinated individuals. So that's one of the many reasons that we definitely recommend people get vaccinated is because you're less likely to suffer from some of these additional complications. We're also seeing some studies emerge about neurologic issues like some cognitive impairment. That is higher in COVID survivors a year after infection than in people who did not have COVID of similar age and background. And so that's an issue that, especially in our county where we have a lot of seniors, the increased demand on care for dementia. And then, of course, a lot of people have brought up the issue about the increased mental health issues we've been seeing over the past couple of years. There's definitely been a significant increase in people reporting stress, anxiety, depression, insomnia symptoms, and that's occurred at a time when, with this increased demand, people are having trouble seeking care for that. So I think, we'll have to continue to follow these issues. We do have a special work group that has been set up in the county where we've been starting to meet about some mental health issues after the pandemic. And so these are all things we need to, continue to monitor and be aware of. It's not, we have often talked about, COVID's going to, be here to stay, and that may be more the kind of acute sick, but there may be some other complications.
Dr. Maguire, before you move off this slide, so obviously we've had 3 main variants, and the Omicron is very new. So as far as the long-term considerations, really those, it seems like when you're talking about months or, a year after the infection, that really, that would be more Alpha and Delta, because
Right.
we haven't had a chance to see. And
Right.
those were, as you said, they were less contagious, but more severe. And Omicron was very contagious and less severe. So these things that are things to consider, but maybe these are more for the first 2 variants that we experienced, and we really just don't know whether, with the less severe Omicron, whether these things would happen.
Yeah, and that's why we just have to do studies, because we don't know. Is it related to which variant, or is it something that's consistent across all of the different types of COVID variants? So, yeah, and that's why a lot of times, you need the time to be able to get the data. And so sometimes we don't know the effect of a current, illness until it's been around a while and we have the time to do some retrospective lookbacks. So, yeah, I certainly hope that Omicron does not have these long-term effects, but, of course, it remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, what is on the horizon for COVID? There's been applications from Pfizer and Merck to get approval for what's called a 4th booster, so a 4th dose. We'll see if that ends up being a recommendation. We are getting a lot of questions at the health department about that, and currently that is not an FDA-approved thing to get a 2nd booster. And then the very youngest of kids, so kids under the age of 5, still are not able to get vaccinated against COVID, but they are likely to get an approval in April, we anticipate. So those are some of the vaccination changes on the horizon. I wanted to move on to a different infectious disease, influenza. So right now, influenza activity in the U.S. and Maryland is low. It is increasing a bit in most of the country. The places where it's at its highest levels are in central and south central U.S. So far, the CDC is estimating there's been almost 3 million flu illnesses, 28,000 hospitalizations, and 1,700 deaths, 13 of which have been in children. The predominant strain we're seeing is flu A. There's really 2 types, flu A, flu B, and then they're often called by these H and N numbers. So the one we're seeing the vast majority of is called H3N2, in case you see that mentioned in news reports. So in hospitalization, in terms of how many people are hospitalized, we're definitely seeing more hospitalizations this season than last season, but much, much fewer than in the previous pre-pandemic seasons. This is likely because this respiratory illness has been sort of, I like to say, crowded out by COVID. And also there was the protective effect of, social distancing and masks. But now that we are not, we don't have as a lot of those protective effects in people aren't wearing masks as much. We'll probably see these other common illnesses like flu spread, and flu is one of those, endemic diseases. So the U.S. Right now mostly is in minimal flu activity, except for Oklahoma and Arkansas, and so Maryland is definitely in that minimal range. This graph actually shows, it's a little hard to see, but the red line is the current season's 21-22 flu hospitalization rate, so it is a tiny bit higher than last year's, but much lower than previous years. And really that 2017-18 flu was a very bad year. I remember that very well. And so it remains to be seen really what's going to happen with flu, because the sort of normal schedule has been disrupted by COVID. Usually we see flu get really bad between, December and March, but because of COVID, things have been really out of schedule. And we've seen that with other viruses too that don't get quite the news attention, where they've been occurring at, kind of the wrong season. This graph shows these two peaks are the pre-pandemic, 2018 and 2019 seasons, and this is actually showing pediatric death due to flu, and really just the past, couple seasons. So this year and last year, we did not see really any, and I believe that's, strongly due to the protective effect of, the masks and, other measures we were taking for COVID. This graph I included mostly to compare the effect of flu and COVID. So the yellow bumps, so we start off in 2018, 19, 20, and 21 as you go along this bottom axis. And so the yellow bumps are the influenza deaths, and the purple bumps are actually COVID deaths. So you can really tell on this chart just how different the mortality has been from the seasonal flu compared to COVID. And what's another little interesting point is that the CDC that made this graph includes this wavy line, which is called an epidemic threshold, and that's when they sort of, change the classification from the disease being, endemic when it's, in the community to epidemic when it's a much higher level than one would expect. Of course, with COVID, we are definitely still in pandemic, status because it's wide-ranging worldwide, and it's, causing outbreaks and everything, but we do anticipate it will get down to a more endemic level where it's, circulating at a normal level, but not really causing outbreaks. When that will happen, remains to be seen still. So again, in Maryland, over the past week, the flu prevalence has been minimal. So far this season in Maryland, there have been 9 influenza deaths in adults, none in children, and 11 people hospitalized. And this is a graph of the hospitalizations for Maryland comparing different years. This year is the green line, 2020 was the blue line, and again mimicking the the U.S. rates. In terms of who has been hospitalized in Maryland so far, again, as we expect, it predominantly affects older, but also some very young. So in terms of vaccination, there are vaccines for flu and there are therapeutics, antivirals for flu. Right now, the rate of vaccination against flu is a lot lower than it usually is, so that's something we want to make sure people don't forget about. We've been talking a lot about COVID vaccination, but flu vaccination is very important because, again, it's a bit uncertain what we're going to experience, this year. Moving on to a different infectious disease, tuberculosis is one that we often don't think about. It's not what we call an endemic disease in the U.S., but It is something that is a reportable illness, which COVID is right now. That means anytime there's a positive case, then it has to be reported to the public health authorities. Flu is not reportable. So that, we have surveillance through other means, but you don't have to report every instance of flu. But tuberculosis, you do. And we have to get involved in the active cases, and usually we really don't have many or any tuberculosis in Talbot County. I looked back, and in 2010 there was an outbreak where 2 people were affected, and then in 2017 there was one where we had 3 people infected with active tuberculosis, and then for some reason the past 2 years tuberculosis has decided to rear its ugly head, and we've actually had more cases than ever, which put, additional demand on our contact tracing abilities and everything. And so, with tuberculosis, it's something where, similar to what we've done with COVID, we have to, do contact tracing where we investigate who has been around the person infected. It's extremely, it's extremely infectious, but also extremely serious. Some instances of tuberculosis are highly resistant to the treatments we have, so it's something we really do want to stamp out. We also have some cases of what's called latent TB, and that's where someone has been infected, but the disease is pretty much asleep. But the reason we do treat it is because it could get reactivated at some point and turn into active. We usually see about 5 or so of those cases per year, and they also require medication, but we don't really do contact tracing for that necessarily. So that is something that we have been, spending some effort on in the health department, and I really hope that the cases slow down a bit, but it will be interesting to see if this trend persists of kind of these unexpectedly high rates of tuberculosis in the community. And it doesn't, 5 or 4 cases doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot for our size population.
Is that trending nationwide, or is it more regional?
No, what happened this year was some unexpected situations. We typically think of the more common cases of someone who comes from a country where it's endemic, we think of someone who's in a congregate setting, like jails or something like that. We've had some unusual cases this year, so I do, where, I can't go into too much depth, but so I do think that this year is an outlier. I haven't seen evidence that there's a significant increase like what we've seen. And again, our numbers are so low that 1 or 2 more cases really throws it off because our normal is 0, But I do hope we get back to 0, next year. Another infectious disease, and this one is also reportable, is HIV. So in Talbot County, the newest numbers we have are for the end of 2020. So there are, at that time, 79 people living with HIV in Talbot County. And on the graph, you can see that Talbot County is yellow, and that is the rate of HIV diagnosis compared to other jurisdictions in Maryland. So we're kind of in the middle range. We're a bit higher than our neighbors, but certainly much, much lower than Baltimore City, where really it's the highest. In the past, in 2020, there were 2 people diagnosed with HIV in Talbot County, and over the past 5 years, there's been 6 new diagnoses. But the good thing about HIV treatment is that it's been around so long that now we're seeing a lot of people really able to live more normal lives and longer lives, and really almost, manage their disease such that they have undetectable viral levels. So that's been a really good trend, just nationally. We do test for HIV in the health department. You can get tested by really any provider. And then coming soon, we have, over the past year and a half, purchased some mobile testing units. So one of the things we'll be using them for as we shift out of focusing on COVID is conducting testing for HIV and also hepatitis C. And we also offer rapid testing for both of those diseases. The last infectious disease I wanted to touch on is one that's actually experiencing an outbreak in the region, not in Talbot County itself, but in the region, and that is avian flu. So this is a highly contagious respiratory flu virus that spreads amongst birds. It affects all sorts of poultry, both wild and, I guess, domesticated. And what's happened recently is that a version of H5N1, so again, like human flu, there's those H and N terms. So this one's called H5N1. They have noticed wild birds in 14 states, and 13 states have seen cases in commercial and what we call backyard poultry. In Talbot, we actually had, during 2021, backyard poultry case who was actually a pet and got successfully treated. But in Maryland right now, there are 2 outbreaks in Cecil County and one in Queen Anne County, and these are occurring at commercial poultry farms. But it is the most recent outbreak, or the first outbreak since 2004. The outbreak was first actually noted in Delaware, and then what they think happened is that maybe some wild birds, transmitted it to these other counties. So state and federal officials have dramatically expanded their surveillance to protect the poultry industry in the Delmarva Peninsula. And I believe I read that 14% of all commercial poultry birds are on the Eastern Shore, so it's an important industry for our region. And so what they've done is they've quarantined the birds, and some have been depopulated, and what they wanted to assure the public is that none of the affected birds at all enter the food system. So there's really actually minimal risk to humans. It is possible, theoretically, that humans could get infected, but there have been no cases in the U.S. I believe there was one case in the U.K., and so the CDC wants to assure people that this is not something that's a significant risk that people should be concerned about, but it has gotten a tiny bit of news coverage recently locally. And so again, it does not affect poultry meat or eggs, and so those are safe to eat. And something to note is there are no commercial chicken farms in Talbot County, so we're actually not directly involved in this outbreak, but it is affecting our neighbors. But we do have some residents who have, backyard poultry, who have chickens for their own uses, who lay their own eggs, and those could get infected theoretically by wild birds. So it's very important for owners of those poultry to wash their hands after interacting with them. And this is an example of a situation that touches on a theory called One Health, if you ever heard about that. So One Health is this idea, this philosophy that diseases between animals and humans and agriculture are all very interconnected. And so sometimes you hear about, an illness jumped from one species to another. And that is actually what we saw with COVID, where I think they determined it probably originated from a food market where there were infected, I want to say bats. And so that ended up jumping from one species. Usually it's from a wild species to a domesticated animal species, then to or a species that we eat, then to humans. And so we've been sort of worried about this often with, influenza. So if you remember back about 12-ish years, there was, quote, swine flu. So that was something where, you saw this in pigs. And so avian flu is one of those things where it's an influenza virus. Theoretically, it could affect humans, but sometimes you have to have some mutations to allow it to jump from one species to another. So there are some people in, academic settings who are focusing on trying to reduce that, risk. And we definitely saw it with COVID. So that is my update on some infectious disease issues which we're working on at the Health Department. I do want to mention a couple of pieces of news. So we, the county was able to get a community block development grant, and that helped us have our early Head Start program move into a beautiful new location. We do anticipate an open house for that location later this spring. And they are hoping to expand their services to actually an older population, to 3-year-olds, and we do have a waiting list even for that program now. I wanted to also mention that this week is LGBTQ Health Week, so this is a week where we're trying to empower individuals in the LGBTQ community to, ensure that they are able to access quality health care. And then in a couple weeks, it will be National Public Health Week, and we'll be having some events during that week. So I hope everyone is enjoying their first week of spring, and I wish you all a happy spring, and hopefully I was able to provide some interesting and maybe better news than last time.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So just open it up.
Couldn't have been worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I greatly appreciate you providing this information to us and keeping it in the forefront, and certainly take it to heart and try to keep everybody safe.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Maguire, for the presentation. I will say that, you took on a heavy task when you came health officer here, and stepped right in and was able to keep things moving in a positive direction, albeit that it was a very fluid situation from the state level and from the CDC, but you were able to keep things moving forward. And you're certainly correct regarding the flu. The one thing I would recommend is don't get the same shot on the same day in the same arm as I did. You don't want to do that. And it's great news to hear that the Early Head Start is finally in their own building. I know we have been housing them at our Bay Street location probably since Kathy Foster was here. So two health officers ago, when they first moved into that building. So to finally have them in that own space is great news to hear. So congratulations on that, and let us know when the open house is going to be.
Will do. We're trying to get the playground built, so everyone can see it, but it'll be soon.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. Okay, all right, next up is another proclamation, the International Transgender Day of Visibility. Madam Secretary, could you read the proclamation, please?
Certificate of Recognition, International Transgender Day of Visibility. Whereas transgender people come from all walks of life and are our co-workers, family, and neighbors, and are a diverse community representing all racial, ethnic, and faith backgrounds. And whereas International Transgender Day of Visibility celebrates transgender representation, activism, and equality, and is honored each year on March 31st as a time to celebrate transgender people around the world, their courage to live openly and authentically, while also raising awareness around the discrimination transgender individuals still face. And whereas we honor the bravery of the many transgender individuals who live and work in our community in their authentic gender, and reaffirm our commitment to promote the full inclusion of transgender individuals in our community. Now therefore, we, the County Council of Talbot County, do hereby recognize March 31st, 2022 as Transgender Day of Visibility in Talbot County, and encourage all citizens to treat each other with dignity and respect, without exception. Given under our hands in the Great Seal of Talbot County this 22nd day of March in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I want to welcome Tina Jones. Come on up.
guest with us as
I
well.
see that, I see that.
Good evening.
Good
Council.
evening.
It's,
Yeah?
thank you very much for issuing this proclamation.
Sure.
I am Tina Jones. I am Chair of the Board of Delmarva Pride Center, probably one of the newest nonprofits that's headquartered here in Talbot County. Joining me is Lisa Berry, who is another member of our board. We serve not just the transgender community, but the LGBT community for the entire Midshore area. One of the things that we do have is a transgender support group called Delmarva Gender Expression Movement that meets here in Easton on the third Tuesday of every month at 6:30 at Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton. We're very happy that you've taken the opportunity to provide this proclamation. Last year, 2021, was the deadliest year on record for transgender people in this country. And most people don't realize that. It's nice to have leaders in our communities stand up and recognize that transgender people are people just like everyone else. You know, and the words that you included in there, that you're reaffirming your commitment to promote the full inclusion of people. And this, for us, is not just transgender people, but all people, regardless of their sexual orientation, their gender identity, their race, their ethnic background. You know, it's so important that leaders take that opportunity to do that, and that you encourage our citizens to also do the same thing, and that most importantly, treat each of us with dignity and respect. That's what this world's all about. I mean, there's so much hate that we see right now. Councilman Lesher, you were speaking, you know, in your opening prayer about the hate that's going on. We see what's going on in the world. We see what's going on in Ukraine. You know, and it's time for us to stop. It's time for us just to come together and love one another and reach out and get to know each person as a person first before we pass a judgment. And so we cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedules at this meeting to recognize this day. This is not just for the transgender community. This is for all of us. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Councilman?
Tina, I want to thank you for your leadership, for your visibility in this community, which and your work, which is bringing both support and comfort to many of our citizens in this county. So thank you for your good work.
And thank you. I know this is not always easy for you either. I know not everybody is as accepting as this council is. And it takes courage on your behalf to stand up for people like me, people like Lisa. You know, and we appreciate that. Again, that's what makes all of us free. That's what makes all of us safe and happy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
And I will echo, just watching a little guy here
Yep.
spinning around. I will echo Mr. Lesher's
Yep.
statements, thanking you for your leadership. I think this is our fourth year, Tina?
It's our third year, because the first
third.
year was the first
Yeah.
year of COVID. So this is the first year I've
Yeah.
been able to come in person.
That's right.
That's good.
It's our
That's good.
third year of doing this with you all, and it seems like you've already put some of the things together with the Delmarva Pride Center.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
looks like you're getting some traction in the community as far as you said, a day of visibility so that people can see you for you. And again, thank you for your courage and for your leadership, for you all coming here and doing this and putting a spotlight on, as you said before, just treating people with a little bit more humanity and stop all the division. I wish it was as easily as you said, we just need to stop, you know, as Mr. Lesher said in his opening prayer.
Right.
There's so much hatred going on in the world and so much killing going on in the world. I wish it was just as easy just to say stop and let it be done. But unfortunately, we know that that's not the case. So for this little guy and for that young girl, let's continue working together to make this a better place.
Absolutely,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank
again,
you.
just one quick plug, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
So we are going to have a Pride Festival in Easton. It is going to be the weekend of June 17th through the 19th, so it'll be a Friday,
17th.
Saturday, and Sunday
Great.
event. On Friday, from 3 to 7, we will be having, Free State Justice will be joining us and providing a free legal clinic to LGBTQ folks of limited means so they can get any services they may need, be that a gender marker change, a name change, issues, if they have any disputes with anyone, if they need to work on wills, anything at all, it's a legal matter. They're going to be providing that service for free that afternoon. We are going to have a drag show and dance at the Hummingbird Inn that evening. Saturday will be our festival, which will be on Harrison Street from 11 till 3. We're very excited about that. We've been talking with the Academy Art Museum, BAM, and the Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass Society regarding their Juneteenth event, so that'll be happening on the Saturday as well. We're hoping that folks will come out for both because they're both about inclusion and acceptance. And then on Sunday, we're going to do a brunch again back at the Hummingbird Inn. So we're very excited about this. We hope everybody will come out. It's going to be a great day for everyone. We've got activities for kids as well. And so we invite you to come, join, and be a part of the community with all of us. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. One last thing. Madam Secretary?
So moved.
Yeah,
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you now.
Get your photo.
Come on up front. Yep.
Let's get your picture.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. He said.
Okay, next on the agenda, we got our introduction of administrative resolution. Madam Secretary, could you read that in the record for us, please?
A resolution authorizing Talbot County to file an application with the Maryland Transit Administration of the Maryland Department of Transportation for a Section 503, 5304, 5307, 5309, 5310, and 5311 grant under the Federal Transit Act, whereas the Maryland Transit Administration is a designated recipient in Maryland for grants under the Federal Transit Act, and whereas the administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration of the Maryland Department of Transportation is authorized to make grants to counties and to local governments for a mass transportation program of projects. And whereas the contract for financial assistance will impose certain obligations upon the applicant, including the provision by the contract of the local share of the project costs in the program. And whereas it is required by the United States Department of Transportation in accordance with the provisions of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that in connection with the filing of an application for assistance under the Federal Transit Act, the applicant give an assurance that it will comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the United States Department of Transportation requirements thereunder. And whereas it is the goal of the applicant that minority business enterprise be utilized to the fullest extent possible in connection with this project, and that definite procedures shall be established and administered to ensure that minority business shall have the maximum construction contracts, supplies, equipment contracts, or consultant and other services. Now therefore be it resolved by Talbot County, Maryland, the filing of the aforesaid application be endorsed, and be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to the Maryland Transit Administration of the Maryland Department of Transportation. Now therefore, the County Council of Talbot County, Maryland hereby endorses this resolution, thereby indicating approval thereof, given under our hands in the Great Seal of Talbot County this 22nd day of March in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good job. Open it up to council.
Is it
Yep.
worth having staff just for the public benefit explain
Yeah.
what this is about?
This is bringing the Bay Bridge to St. Michael's, right?
That's exactly.
Actually, Mr. Lesher, this should have been included in the March 8th
Right.
agenda
This is
with
the
part of the
follow-on.
Delmarva Community Transit.
Right. It's a standard we do every year.
Inadvertently was omitted.
Okay.
Well, with that, I'll move the
Make-
resolution.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Okay. Madam Secretary, we have another administrative resolution. Could you read that one too, please?
It's a little wordy.
It is a little wordy. You can do short version.
An administrative resolution entitled, "A Resolution of Talbot County, Maryland, the county, authorizing the issuance and sale of consolidated public improvement general obligation bonds in a principal amount not exceeding $600,000 pursuant to the authority of Bill Number 1493, enacted by the County Council of Talbot County, Maryland on September 14, 2021, the public local law, Section 10203 of the Local Government Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, 2013 Replacement Volume as amended, the Enabling Act, and Section 623 of the Charter of Talbot County, Maryland, the Charter. The bonds to be designated Talbot County, Maryland General Obligation Bonds, St. Michael's Wastewater System Belt Filter. The net proceeds of the sale thereof to be used and applied for the public purpose of financing or refinancing rehabilitation improvements to certain wastewater facilities located within the county as more particularly described herein, together with financing or refinancing of the acquisition of all necessary property rights and equipment and related architectural, financial, legal, planning, and engineering expenses, prescribing the form and tenor of the bonds and the terms and conditions for the issuance and sale thereof at private sale to the United States of America, acting through Rural Utilities Service, United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, authorizing the consolidation of separate series of bonds into one or more bonds, providing for the prompt payment of the maturing principal of and interest on the bonds, coveting to levy and collect all taxes necessary to provide for the payment of the principal of and interest on such bonds, subject to the limitations set forth in Section 614 of the county charter, and generally relating to the issuance, sale, and delivery of the bonds.
Okay. Thank you, counsel. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any discussion on this?
Could someone give a,
Don't feel the press. Ray's back there.
Yep.
Yes, Council, this is associated with the belt filter press that we have at the St. Michael's wastewater treatment plant. Ultimately, the current press that we had failed, so this is going to be a replacement press. Currently, we're waiting for that press to be delivered. Hopefully in May, we'll have that press online. This is basically part of the process of securing the loan that we've applied for through rural development.
Okay. You're good? All right, make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion, second, Madam Secretary. Could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
aye?
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Okay, motion passed. Okay, next on the agenda, introduction to legislation. Madam Secretary, could you please read the title of the bill into the record, please?
A bill to amend Chapter 24 Boards, Committees, and Commissions of the Talbot County Code in order to add a new Article 5 entitled Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, you want to help us on this one?
Sure. So
Sure.
briefly, the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021 requires each county to create a police accountability board and administrative charging committee. Much of the language in this bill is what's required under the act and the regulations that are being considered by the Maryland Police and Correctional Training Commission. So and that's
Okay.
what this is. We've had a couple of public work sessions about it.
Sure, okay. All right.
Yeah, I just want to send
Yep.
my thanks out to Sheriff Gamble,
Right.
Chief Smith, and all the other associated chiefs and municipalities for coming out and helping out with this. I know that this was all new to them.
Yep.
And of course, working with Patrick to kind of get the wording straight.
Right.
As Patrick indicated, most of the wording was already in place through the language of the legislation. We just had to tailor some of it according to the way Talbot County wanted to proceed with it. So this is the first step in this process of enacting these bodies, is to get them in Chapter 24, and therefore, certainly will support us moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Appreciate that. Any other comments? I'd like to thank all the sheriffs and the chiefs working together. And Patrick, you guys, for the last 3 months, you've been working really hard to put all this together. So I want to thank everybody for doing that. So, okay, Madam Secretary, you want to raise a hand?
You want sponsors first?
Yep. I was going to raise your hand to sponsor.
By council.
Okay, would you please announce the number of the bill and the public hearing, the day and time, please?
Yes, this will be known as Bill Number 1497, and the public hearing will be on Tuesday, April 12th at 6:30 PM.
Okay. Okay, next up is public hearing on the community block grant. Mary Kay, you want to come on up? Welcome.
Hi, thank you
How
very
you
much.
doing?
Thank you for having me this
Yeah,
evening.
no problem.
The Department of Housing and Community Development requires that projects that receive community development block grant funds to hold a second public hearing to update the council and the public on the progress of the spending and the progress of the project. We have a couple projects before you today. The first is the food program. The Talbot County applied for a CDBG grant in June of 2020 and executed an agreement with the Department of Housing and Community Development in August of 2020. We received $250,000 grant from the state, which was divided into 2 separate food programs. The Countywide program received $150,000 and was administered by the St. Michael's Community Center. These funds supported staff costs, kitchen equipment, food, and supplies to serve the low to moderate income beneficiaries. The Senior Food Program was administered by the Upper Shore Aging, and they received $100,000 for food delivery for homebound senior citizens. The Countywide Food Program, we signed a sub-recipient agreement with the St. Michael's Community Center in July of 2020, and they were able to purchase new kitchen equipment, and 370 of those had to meet the low to moderate income. As of October 2021, they had met that beneficiary count, having served over 467 persons. This is a few of the items that were purchased with the grant funding. They were able to purchase new ovens, immersion blenders, induction burner. They also purchased new racks, pans, prep tables, storage shelving, and other kitchen essentials. The Senior Food Program signed a subrecipient agreement with the Upper Shore Aging in July of 2020. The grant provided $100,000, and Upper Shore Aging provided just over $43,000 in project administration. The grant funds were used to prepare, pack, and distribute meals to homebound senior citizens, and the grant funds were distributed between August of 2020 and August of 2021. They were able to meet their beneficiary count of 30 within the first quarter of the grant cycle. These are a few of the volunteers and the Upper Shore Aging workers as they prepared the meals and prepared them for distribution. The senior centers of the Upper Shore Aging and the Meals on Wheels program continue to offer services and to serve our local senior population. We want to say thank you to the staff and the volunteers of the St. Michael's Community Center, the Upper Shore Aging, and the Meals on Wheels members, and also the community that helped to assist and volunteer with these programs as well. So I would ask if there's any members of the St. Michael's Community Center or Upper Shore Aging that would like to say
Sure.
anything in regard to the program.
Yeah, sure. Anybody would like to come on up? I know Robbie wants to come up.
Hi, thank you for having me speak. My name's
welcome.
Patrick Rofe. I'm the new executive director at St. Michael's Community Center, and I just want to, again, say thank you for funneling that grant through our organization, because you saw that there were 467 individuals served, but one of the things that you don't see is that, what that means is we served about, over the course of the grant, about 215,000 meals. That's about 2,000 meals a week, and we were distributing at the peak of the pandemic the year before, about 500 10-pound pantry bags every week to the community, as well as over 500 meals to the community in the Bay 100 area every week. And that really hasn't abated too much. It's been cut in half about, but we've been seeing new clients every week. So the need is still there, and we're very appreciative for the support. So it's made a huge difference in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. I think all of you know me, but I'm Charlene Brooks. I'm the manager at Brooklyn's Place, the Talbot County Senior Center. And I can't thank Mary Kay enough for keeping us on track, number one.
Yeah.
But I cannot thank the volunteers enough, because without them, we would not have been able to do what we did. At the peak of the pandemic, we were sending out over 800 meals per week. This is just through Meals on Wheels, and that's not counting the food pantry that we are doing in conjunction with St. Mark's. But the volunteers came in, they helped to pack the stuff, they delivered. I mean, it was just amazing. And as Patrick said, the need is still there. Of course, we're not sending out that many meals now. We're doing a little over 700 a week, but the need is still there. There are still people in this community that need meals and that are not taking advantage of it. So thank you all so very much for all of your support.
Well, thank you, guys. We really appreciate everything you do. You were very, very valuable to all the communities and everything. That's a lot of meals, and we can't thank you enough. Council?
So transportation has always been a hot button for me. I want our seniors to be able to stay in their homes as long as possible and be as comfortable in their homes as possible. And we know that they can't always afford a car or don't always have the option to get out to get the food that they need. So thank you for being there and organizing the volunteers to make sure that everyone is able to get a meal who requests one. Thank you.
And thank you for being one of our Meals on Wheels. I'm sorry. Well, maybe we can bribe the rest of them.
That truck will hold a lot.
Yeah. Lesher?
This is such an important program, and it is just one of the programs that our senior centers and our Upper Shore Aging are delivering on. You are a valuable part of this community, and this is just one shining example of why that is the case. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Patrick. Nice meeting you. And of course, we see Mrs. Brooks nearly at least once a month. But yes, let me echo what my colleagues have just said. Thank you for all that you've done, over the last 2.5 years dealing with the COVID crisis. Getting food into families' homes became a big push when we sat down and had our team meetings. How are we going to get the food distributed to the people? I don't think the community realizes what the St. Michael's Community Center does in that small little building that you operate out and how many people that you serve. I read a statistic not too long ago. When you look at food insecure homes, you don't think about food insecure homes in agricultural communities because you think, hey, they're growing the food. Why are they food insecure? But the largest block of food insecure homes actually come out of our community. So the work that you're doing is still vital although we're producing the corn, we're producing the grain and so forth, we still have a great need in the community for those homes that are food insecure. We hear about food deserts where we go through blocks of neighborhoods, mostly in urban settings, where they don't have a market. Well, St. Michael's was that way for a while. You can remember a couple of years back when you didn't have a market. So, again, tip my hat to you all for all the great work you're doing, all the great work that USA is doing. Gary, thank you for all that you're doing back there. We appreciate it. We need you as a partner. We really do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pack.
Not a lot left to say. My colleagues have done a great job in recognizing all of the great work that you do. I just want to give out a shout out to Mary Kay, just because now that we are able to have somebody that's dedicated to just working on these grants and the block grants and all of that, I think it makes it a lot more efficient. And I think one thing that we learned through COVID is how much can get done. And so going forward, we have all the tools for how to get this done, even when, we don't want to be in crisis again, but we have that opportunity, to get things done when we need to do so. And it takes a team, and we certainly have a great one. So thank you very much.
Okay, guys, thank you. Appreciate it.
Another one?
Okay, you want to go to the next one?
Yes.
Okay.
So the next grant that we want to talk about, again, having to meet the requirement for DHCD of having our second public hearing, we want to talk about the Perkins Family YMCA Bay 100 Senior Center. The county applied for a community development block grant through DHCD in June of 2018, and the grant agreement was signed in November of 2018. The project was for a 24,000 square foot addition to the St. Michael's High School campus to be used as a shared space for a senior center and a YMCA located on Seymour Avenue in St. Michael's. The CDBG grant offered $200,000 for site work, and other sources and state grants provided over $8 million for additional site work, construction, and project administration. The county entered into a subrecipient agreement with Upper Shore Aging and the Young Men's Christian Association of the Chesapeake in December of 2018, and grant funds were distributed June through October of 2019. The agreement required 850 low to moderate income beneficiaries to be served, and 288 of those beneficiaries had been served by December 2021. The mandatory closure of senior centers through the COVID crisis had an impact on some of the abilities to serve, so that's why we haven't met the number yet, but they are definitely continuing on and providing the services and tracking again now that they're reopened. So it was a relatively quick construction project from groundbreaking in mid to late 2018 to the ribbon cutting in June of 2019. Some of the new facility amenities include a central kitchen, dual dining room and gymnasium area, meeting space, a warm water exercise pool, wellness center, exercise and locker rooms, sauna, childcare, nursery center. And the site work, this just shows some of the site work and the beginning phases of the construction. And these are a few photographs of the interior space, the swimming pool construction, and the common and reception area. The Governor Hogan did visit the Oxford and St. Michael's area and toured the new YMCA Senior Center in August of 2021. And the completed senior center facility offers the opportunity for learning and for socializing and gatherings. Due to the mandatory state closure of all the senior centers during COVID pandemic, the senior center got creative and offered classes through the online services and Zoom classes. The county coordinated with DHCD to get approval of the attendees of those online classes as beneficiaries to count toward their goal. So that was a creative way for them to still be able to provide some services. They offered several different classes: watercolors, knitting, and computer help. I think we all needed the computer help during the pandemic. The opportunity for construction of and future success of the facility is in large part due to community involvement again. The children that are pictured here are from the Critchlow Atkins Child Care Facility, and to the left are several of the community members, volunteers, and Upper Shore aging staff. And last but certainly not least, again, is the thank yous to all of those that are listed here and to the many others who provided support, partnerships, grants, donations, volunteerism. The facility was able to get grants through the governor's office. The county provided support for this particular project. So we just want to thank everyone who participated in either as a volunteer or through the grants and donations that helped make this project come to fruition. So we thank you very much.
Yep.
And again, we have members and representatives
Yep.
from the senior center and
Yep.
the Upper Shore Aging
Yep.
that we'd like to have.
Yep, come on up. Welcome, guys. How are you doing? Good seeing you.
I'm Ann DeMart. I'm the manager of the Bay 100 Senior Center. I want to thank you all for your support of this. It's been a challenge because we were actually closed longer than we were open.
Yeah.
We opened in June of 2019. We reopened in July. We put off the reopening a little bit because they had summer camp programs going on. We wanted to make sure the seniors were safe. But people have returned in force. We're so happy.
That's
And
great.
we've added some new programs. But the best news, I ran some stats the other day just to see, we've signed up 66 new members just since we reopened.
Wow.
And part of that is due to some new programs we initiated. We got Tai Chi and then also a program that Brooklets and St. Michael's are doing called Aging Mastery, which is a 10-week program on how to enhance the later years. So thank you very much. You've made many seniors and many of their adult children very happy. They're feeling very connected and enjoying the center very much. Thank you.
Good. It's great.
Council, good to see you. Robbie Gill, CEO from the YMCA. Tracy Usler, who runs that Y and makes the impact. She's the one that does heavy lifting. I just want to say thank you for your vision and leadership and willingness to think out of the box. This is the first model of this type where you've got a YMCA sitting on school property that is also a senior center. So when we look way back in the day about a small community blending all that together, it really works. And so while COVID has had an impact, I would tell you there are 2,300 members of the YMCA in that community in the Bay 100 area, and you take the senior center programming that's being served as well, and then all the work that we're doing and partnering and collaborating with the kids that are on site there, that Y/senior center is serving 3 out of 4 people in the Bay 100 area. So it is a model to lift up. It's been lifted up at the state level by the governor, the comptroller as well, and is going to be replicated in Centerville, Maryland, as they closed their senior center back in 2012. So I just want to say thank you for your vision. I mean, it's a great model in a rural community of how you can work together to make an impact, and I just greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
That facility is amazing. I remember the ribbon cutting, and I remember Mr. Pack being a little like, I don't know if that can work. And then through your vision, and how we saw it all come together and work together in a community. I am all for projects where we can multitask, and you don't need to build 3 different gymnasiums necessarily. the schools, working together with the community and auditoriums and all of that kind of stuff. In a small community, we do need to be efficient, and we have found a wonderful way to do that, and it's amazing that it's going to be replicated. They should do them all, all over the place. So thank you so much.
That's a great point, Laura. And I would also say too, that total project was 8.3 million. 6.9 million of that came through private donations in this community of over 200 people who believed in that model and believed it could make an impact. And so that says a lot too when you've got that many people in our community willing to step up and say, hey, we think this can make a difference for the next 80 years. So the state played a role. You guys played a tremendous role. Jessica is just a beast in making that happen back in the day. I will always be grateful for her efforts. But yeah, it's just something, I go in there every day that I'm in there and I see Bob Perkins' picture. And one of my great sadnesses is he passed away before that Y opened. I'll cry thinking about him, but I tap him. I know the staff think, what is he doing hitting that picture? But I miss him, and but I know he's looking down. He's so proud of the work that's happening there.
That's good.
Well, I would say, Robbie, thank you and Chaldine for your vision. As Laura alluded to, I do remember those early meetings when myself and Mr. Hollis sat down with you, and I did not see this working. I did not see how you could put a senior population in with a bunch of kids. So how is this going to work? And once we got around to listening to you two figure it out and say we can make it work, just get out of our way and let us do it. You did, and it came out to be very, very successfully done. Ann came on board to run the day-to-day down there, and Tracy's, of course, she's a rock star. So, you guys have a good thing there, and again, in Little St. Michael's, that is a model for other YMCA intergenerational partnerships around the state. Has done very well. I remember Chaldine sent out a survey to see what kind of services the Bay Hunter community wanted to see out of that senior center down there, so it would not be duplicating services or introducing something that the people didn't want. So, and it turned out very well. So, hats off to all of you.
Well, and on top of that, I know that the state did not make it easy. The system was not set up to be able to do this cooperative arrangement on school property, and you persevered. And even though you had the vision, and you were patient with us until we found a way to make this work, and so I'm grateful for your partnership in getting us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great team effort.
Yep.
One of the types of ways to diversify a group is by age. And so by including different generations, telling different stories, sharing experiences, it energizes. So I think it's a great concept. I remember hearing about the programming and what was coming, and then COVID came. But I'm excited to see what's going to come out of there now that we're back open and excited. So enjoy the energy and enjoy the ride.
Yep, I would agree too with all my colleagues. We're really proud of all you guys, all you, and it's a great feeling to be involved in something like that, because everybody was a little apprehensive at first, but you guys pulled it off, and I tell you, like you say, all of you are rock stars, that's for sure. So in the community is benefited from that. So appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
So is there now some kind of public hearing about all this, or is this just a?
Yeah. So do we?
If anybody wants to come up.
Yeah. Is anybody?
You guys have a tough job. Thank you for everything you do.
Yep.
We all appreciate it.
Yep.
We'll figure it out.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, I would just like to say that the CDBG grant projects require a lot of communication and tracking and working with each of these agencies to do reporting and financial reports, beneficiary tracking. So it goes both ways. They put a lot of work into making sure that this happens and that we meet the requirements that we need to spend these funds. So I appreciate the working relationship that I have with each of them as well.
Okay. All right. All right. That's good. So
Anybody from the public wish to speak?
Yeah, if there's, you know, I'm going to ask anybody here over here to my left, if anybody would like to come up and speak about it, you're welcome to come up. Okay. Anybody here on the right? Well, we appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a few-minute break and get Mr. Lesher's mic straight here. Okay. Let's get going on the update with the Talbot County, or the Connection Talbot Broadband Project, and we're welcome with these guys. You want to introduce your team?
I'd love to.
Okay.
Well, good evening, President
Yep.
Callahan and
Yep.
council. Thank you for giving us some time this evening to come before you and talk about this important project. My name is Hugh Grundon. I'm the President and CEO of Eastern Utilities, and I have a couple of my colleagues here with me tonight, Steve Ochi, our Chief Financial Officer, and Ted Book, who is the Director of Velocity, which is our cable and internet and phone business. We're here this evening to provide an update on Connect Talbot, and it is a transformational project, and you folks know that. And the initiative is to secure broadband access for all the unserved residents of Talbot County. A partnership was developed between Eastern Utilities and Talbot County back in 2018 to address this issue, and I'm pleased to tell you tonight we are well underway. An important side note is this partnership in no way precludes any other internet service provider, known as an ISP, from providing service anywhere in Talbot County. As you're well aware, this is a competitive market space. There are already multiple internet service providers in the county, providing service mainly in the populated areas. So what this partnership has done has given us access to state and federal funding to solve the rural broadband problem. And that's the only way that it would be solved is with funds coming from the state and fed programs. So it unlocked those funds for us to move forward on our mission. I hope that you received a two-sided document in your advanced materials. It is up on the screen as well. There are many, many bullets divided up into different areas such as history and what we're going to do in the future, and then a map on the back. In deference to your time this evening, I'm not going to go through every one of those points, but I'm more than happy to address any questions you may have as you review those. What I'm going to do this evening is provide a status update on the project and outline a remaining gap in the funding, which is a customer contribution, otherwise known as a contribution in aid of construction. This is a customer's share of the overall broadband infrastructure to bring the service to their property line. A second component of the customer contribution are the cost to install the facilities, particularly the fiber, along the long farm lanes, driveways, private roadways. Many of those in Talbot County, the private roadways service multiple houses. This is something we did not have built into our project in the first iteration. And instead, you may recall we put together a portfolio of funding and we included the customers in there. So I'll get back to that in a second. Just bear that in mind that there's an element of customer contribution, and I want to come back to that at the end of my presentation. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about where we stand with Connect Talbot. Counting the county's initial commitment, several grants that we've secured, and the USDA Reconnect grant, that was the largest program that we got started with, we've been awarded $20 million for the Connect Talbot project, which will reach 92% of the unserved locations in Talbot County, or approximately 3,300 parcels, and we intend to do this in the next 48 months. In January of this year, we applied to the state of Maryland, the Broadband Infrastructure Program, for a grant of $3.8 million to complete the final 8%. Remember, our objective was to cover 100% of the unserved. And we committed to you when we established our partnership, we would continue to pursue funding sources so we can get to that 100%. So we're awaiting word on that. Those unserved areas are really the western areas of the county, places like Nevitt, Bosman, Claiborne, and Tillman. And it's about 300 locations, but extremely rural in those locations. Only about between 1 and 5 homes in different pockets. But back to the Reconnect project, and that was the big application that we submitted initially. We were awarded in 2020. As soon as we finished the design for that project, which was last year, we started building this new system with some minor contracts that were allowed by the USDA. We called these quick win areas because they were closer to our system. And this early work has provided access to about 100 parcels, and we have provisionally connected about 40 customers. Now, we haven't made a splash about that. We were getting out of the gate softly, but I'm here to tell you tonight that we reached a major milestone about 2 weeks ago, and we received the final approval from the USDA for our Reconnect contract. I won't belabor the point of how laborious that was to go through the federal process, but we got the ball across the finish line, and that contract is now approved. You may have noticed as you've gone about the county, multiple contractors are actively working in the county installing the backbone of this new fiber system. In the industry, many times we call this the middle mile, but you build the foundation of the house first and then you move on. So that's what you see going on in the county right now. An interactive construction map is being added to our Connect Talbot website for customers to see where constructive activities are actually occurring. And then as we finish those areas, you get those areas ready for connection, customers will be able to go online, and potential customers go online and see when service is ready in their area. On the back part of your advanced document, we did some shading, and you can see in that shading that basically the yellow sort of waffle pattern, those are the 3 areas we actually have contractors working in right now. So instead of serially doing separate parts of the county, we've been able to secure contractors and equipment and materials to attack, if you will, or go into multiple areas of the county at one time. Hopefully that's going to materially speed up the time to finish this project. And there's a lot of work to be done, certainly. But again, our goal is to complete this in the next 48 months. At this time, the only grant-funded program that we're working in the county is in this USDA. And the only one that is requiring a customer contribution is the Reconnect program, the largest program, the red part of that. And again, the landscape changed. We started working on this application in 2019, but things have changed. And I'll get to the ask in a moment. But it is the only grant that we've secured for the county that requires a customer contribution. And again, this customer contribution is for the contribution aid of construction, building that foundation, and then lengthy or difficult service drops. And we're in this situation result of being early to the game, if you will, with the Reconnect project. And again, the landscape has changed, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And we've mitigated much of the cost associated with this project, but we're unable to find funding to alleviate this customer contributions requirement. One of the things that we did do, as soon as we received the notice back in 2000, we started securing all the materials necessary to construct this project. We had no idea there was going to be a supply chain shortage, but it turns out that between the supply chain difficulties and inflation, those materials are increasingly difficult to obtain, and they are certainly more expensive. We've got about 1.2 million feet of fiber sitting on the yard, physically on the yard, ready to go. We did not want to be in a situation where we got final approval from the feds, only to find out we couldn't get the materials to move forward with the project. So we're doing a lot of those sorts of things to secure an early completion to this project, and also that is going to help with the funding. Or the cost of the project, because when we priced this job, it was late 2017, 2018 pricing. Those of you who have tried to build anything recently understand that the cost of materials and labor has gone up appreciably. So I think we've hedged ourselves well, and I think that's just going to help in our success in this project. The total cost of these customer contributions in the USDA Reconnect portion of the Connect Talbot project is $4 million. $1.5 million of that is the construction aid, contribution aid of construction. The remaining 2.5 is for those complex and lengthy service drops that I talked about, mostly on the customer premises, going up driveways, farm lanes, that sort of thing again. So the ask this evening is we're requesting the County Council to provide $1.75 million of their American Rescue Plan Act funding to close this gap for the customers that are going to benefit from this project. Combined with an anticipated state block grant of $1 million And Eastern Utilities is able to put up $1.25 million to solve this problem. The $1.5 million contribution from the county would eliminate this barrier to entry for the customers. And it's a very progressive act as well, inasmuch as the cost, the contribution to native construction was the same for all customers, no matter your economic status or where you lived or anything else. So the use of the, I'll call the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, by using them in this manner, not only are you not just picking individual winners and losers, but we're benefiting all of our constituents in the county. The other point I want to make is time is of the essence in this request. And what I mean by that is, as I indicated, we are on the eve of putting out collateral material, inviting folks to sign up for service, and really getting the sign-ups well underway. We want to be able to tell the customers, do you have to put up a contribution in native construction? Do you have an extra cost for this long service drop? If you do, we're going to have to say that up front. You can't go back and say it. What we'd rather do is contribute our part of it, have the state contribute a piece, and have the county contribute a piece in order to eliminate this what I think is a barrier to entry and certainly a cost to our county constituents. And certainly not wanting to discount the negative impacts that the pandemic's had on just about every aspect of our life. One bright spot is the substantial funding that has been made widely available. The CARES Act, ARPA, the infrastructure bill that passed. There's not a bill that any one of those bills where broadband's not mentioned. So it's terrific that the necessity for broadband, particularly in rural areas, unserved people, has gained the attention of the state and federal government, and that makes funds widely available. So Talbot County, I think through our partnership, is making very, very good use and accessing those funds. Excuse me. So we trust, I hope this update, I'm being deferential to your time this evening as the hour grows late, but this is a very cursory overview of our progress. I am thrilled to come before you tonight and say we are well underway. Several years ago we talked about, is this even possible? And it is, and we're making it happen right now. What I would ask you to consider is relieving the county constituents of the burden of a construction contribution to native construction and these longer drops.
Yeah, Mr. Paddock.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. The 40 that's already connected, were they assessed the capital charges?
They were told there was the likelihood of a capital charge. I noted them as provisional connections. So as soon as we get a clear answer, we have to go back to those 40 and firm up whether in fact they are going to be charged that contribution to native construction. They have been advised that that charge is sitting out there. Okay. But, and we didn't promise any, we didn't bind you folks or promise anything for sure, but we termed those provisional. We could get them on so quickly, we just didn't want to wait. And so we'll have to go back to those folks.
So it's sitting there on their account that they're not being
That's
charged?
Right. That's right.
Okay. On your map, just the green horizontal areas that read in the ledger at the bottom,
Yep.
Maryland, what does that signify?
So I think we ended up with 5 different grants. And in order to get out in that area, and you see just a little further to the west, see it hatches vertically as well.
Right, there's a vertical green.
So
and
that
horizontal
was, the vertical, the cross-hatching, if you will, was a combination of the USDA Community Connect. And in order to cover the rest of that area, we filed an application with the State of Maryland Office of Rural Broadband.
Okay.
Those are the horizontal green lines.
Okay. That's rural broadband. And what about the vertical green that says Community Connect?
Right, so everywhere you see vertical green, you should see horizontal as well. It should look like a square check pattern.
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, if you look outside of Oxford, those are just horizontal.
The Community Connect is right here.
Yeah,
Yep.
Community Connect.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you said just vertical.
Well, in the ledger, just
We'll
show it.
start over, Mr. Pack. I've confused us completely.
That's okay. So you're saying that the horizontal green is rural broadband?
Yes,
Okay.
State of Maryland.
So the vertical, which now you're saying is actually, now that I see, is actually a.
It's
package.
actually a funding overlay.
Okay, so that's some rural broadband money along with what?
USDA Community
USDA.
Connect.
Okay, USDA money. Okay. And
You
so-
don't often see two grants overlapping. In fact, that's the only place you see it, but that's the way the mapping was in the grant application process, so we overlaid the two.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. All right, and the rest of the Lesher can read, okay, that's good, that's all I have, Chuck.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, go ahead.
I know that the standard has changed a bit for what people's expectations are of high-speed broadband. From the beginning of this project and to what you're able to deliver now, I know that these grants you've had to promise to deliver at a certain minimum speed, but what do you actually expect to deliver to these customers?
I can answer it, but I brought Ted with me.
So the grant requires us to be able to offer a 100 by 100 service, so 100 meg symmetric service. We're going to be mimicking our speeds in Easton under our normal or on our regular business. So the tiers that we have today for our Easton customers will be the same in the county. However, we will have the ability to offer higher speeds if people choose to pay for a premium service for higher speeds. The service we're putting in is actually 10 gigabit service. It's a 10 gigabit PON service. So we can go, higher than 100. We could go gigabit symmetric or higher. So we're setting ourselves up. 10 gigabit PON service right now is like the top of the line of what you can do today at the price point. So we're not going in with the, just the bare minimum. We're going in with the ability to grow into a higher levels because, as you know, customers today, 100 meg today is going to be gigabit tomorrow is going to be 10 gig 5 years from now.
So this infrastructure that you're putting in has that capacity to serve increased needs over time?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
It is, at least commercially, it's a state-of-the-art passive optical network. That's the equipment we've purchased, that's the equipment we're installing with your funds, our funds, and the other funds that we've been able to secure.
And just one, and you alluded to the fact that all the grants, the CARES grant money had some piece in there for broadband. Of course, this money now through ARPA has some broadband piece in it, as well as the infrastructure bill that hopefully will get passed later this year. And I think the one thing that the legislature's realized is that if we don't have the ability for people to work remotely, we're not going to get the jobs done. God forbid had this pandemic hit us around 1995. There would be no homeschooling.
Right.
There would be no working from home. We probably would have came to a standstill economically. So because we had the infrastructure in place in 2020, you could just easily switch and go to homeschooling, although I lost a lot of hair doing that. But anyway, so I think that is one thing that we need to give our legislatures credit for, having that foresight to put broadband measures in those bills, because we have to get, and we're actually, U.S. is actually behind the game. There are some places around the world that already have this in place, and redundant lines in place, so.
Yep. Not only, we've all understood there has to be ubiquitous access to broadband at some point, and we planned that in our strategic planning, maybe going out 8, 9, 10 years. COVID brought that all to today. When you talk about telemedicine, business, education, shopping from home, to have your groceries delivered so you don't have to leave your home, it came crashing in 2020, starting, I believe, March 13th is when Clay Stamp was with us and said, we're shutting down. So that's, I think it was Friday the 13th that we started that. But it absolutely has brought it to the fore, and you're right, the legislators have tuned into that and said, this is essential, and this must be done.
Yeah.
And what you need is $1.75 million from the ARPA funding to close the deal to make this work.
Yes.
Okay.
So I just want to go on the record to say that in transparency, I didn't realize that I'm going to be connected to this until I just recently saw it in my yard under the flyer, which was very exciting.
So you might have to recuse yourself, Mr. DeVillio.
I was thinking about that.
We weren't looking where you live, but.
Yes, I know that wasn't any determination.
No.
When looking at the map, I see that it's going to expand out and cover the Chapel District Elementary School, which is an area where there's no cell phone service, something that we've been battling for a long time. So any ability to increase communication out there, I greatly appreciate, and I know that this will be a big improvement for that. So I'm excited. There's a lot of things that we don't even haven't even thought about that this is going to benefit. And again, I said it earlier. It's always been my goal for our constituents to age in place at their home. And right now, we've all seen it. You can have your pharmacy, your prescriptions delivered to you. Everything is on the internet. All the information you need. People are at home watching this right now. So without that, their lives are drastically different. And so I thank you for going that extra mile with this and coming up with the best case scenario and being such a great partner with this council.
Likewise.
I mean, I feel like it's like the 1900s adding electricity in Appalachia or something. I can't believe that in my life I'm doing something like that, you know, but that's how important
There's a real
this is
parallel.
to individuals. So I'm excited for it.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
I was actually loud because my light's not on.
Well, thank you for your time, and as always, should you have any questions or require additional information, we are
Sure.
a phone call away.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds great, guys. Great, good job. Okay.
We're good, Clay.
Okay, so next up, Cassandra's going to come up, and she's going to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act that she's been working really hard on, her and Vice President Lesher and her committee. So you want to go ahead and bring us up on the speed on how we're going to be helping the community.
All righty.
Yep.
Good evening, President Callahan
Yep.
and County Council members. I know y'all are tired, and I only have 26 slides.
That's all right.
So I will try to make it
Well, this is
snappy here.
important stuff, and I tell you,
This is very
this is one of the reasons that we're all up here right now and giving back to the community.
Well, it
Yeah.
is a real pleasure to be with you here tonight. I'm going to be talking about the state and local fiscal recovery funds that Talbot County received as part of the American Rescue Plan Act. We received about $7.2 million, and I'm going to report briefly on the program, just to give a brief overview to you and to our listeners and those who are watching and are here tonight. And I'm also going to give the results of the survey that we did, asking our citizens to comment on how they would like to see these funds distributed. And then I'm going to share the recommendations from the task force. First, I want to introduce, though, the members of the task force who've worked really hard on this initiative. We've been led by Councilman Lesher, and Clay Stamp, Jessica Morris are on the committee, Joy Nagel, and Ken Calcanini, who is our grants clerk, Ray Clark, who I believe is still with us, and Nancy Andrew of the Talbot Family Network, and of course, myself. We have been thoughtful, deliberate, and thorough in our assessment of the opportunity that Talbot County has been given, and we're ready to make recommendations on the first portion of the funding. And how did we get to these decisions? Well, as I said, we asked our citizens. I wanted to go over just really briefly over the allowable expenditures for this money, because it is somewhat narrow. Everything okay? I'm sorry. Investments in infrastructure certainly are allowable expenditures. That includes water, sewer, and broadband. Investments in public health. At the end of the day, this is an effort by the Congress to help us have the resources we need to continue the fight against COVID-19. Assistance to household and assistance to businesses to spur the economic recovery and to help those who need it. Investments in tourism was on our survey, and to some that seemed like a non sequitur. But the program allows for support to targeted industries that have been hit hardest. And when we did our survey, tourism was the only one listed. That's since been expanded to others, as you can prove it, and is how you choose to use your money. And then, of course, economic recovery. And I think this is really important because every federal treasury webinar that we've sat through, they've stressed this. And you know, we have these resources to build a strong, resilient, equitable recovery. Things that cannot be used for: tax refunds, pension plans, debt service or replenishing reserves, or anything that goes against CDC guidelines. But these are pretty narrow things, and we have no regard to using them in this way either. So the timeline, we received the first tranche. Tranche is your word of the day. That's a French word that is the first payment. We received our money in May of 2021, and that's the first half of the money. We have until December 31st, 2024 to entail these funds, and then December 31st, 2026 to spend these funds. So what did our survey say? 634 people responded when we asked them how that we should spend this money. 52% of the respondents were from Easton, with responses coming from every corner of Talbot County. And we engaged Beacon at Salisbury University to do this survey for us, and they thought these were extraordinary results, especially since we launched the week before Christmas and ended January 16th with our survey. They asked me if I was giving out cookies to get people to answer the survey. I said, no, indeed, we have a very engaged populace, and we're glad to hear from them about this. So of the 6 categories that I've identified, these 3 rank the highest: infrastructure, and specifically expansion of broadband for education, remote work, and telehealth. The number 2 was public health. This is a direct quote from the 97-page report, which I'm not going to make you all read. I've gone through it, made detailed notes, and this is a direct quote. We've learned from the pandemic that public health is vital. And of course, assistance to households. People should always be first when considering such issues. And this, again, a direct quote from our people. When you look at that top ranking segment, broadband was number 1. 45% of those answering the survey ranked expansion of broadband to unserved and underserved portions of the county as very important. Continuing to fight the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, is the core, again, of the ARPA legislation. And our people ranked that number 2 in number of priorities. And a new EMS station in the north part of the county and a backup 911 center topped the list, followed by improvements in our health department. And I noted Mr. Lesher's prayer tonight when he prayed for us all to have a generous heart. Well, I can say with authority that our people have a generous heart because they ranked having a helping hand for those in need as very important. Assistance to households and small businesses and nonprofits ranked 3rd and 4th, and we're very close together. Other needs that were identified and mentioned over and over, we had an open-ended questions on every one of our questions. Every segment had an open-ended question with it, which is why the survey is 97 pages long in the report. Other things that people said were important: a new hospital, the cell towers in remote parts of the county, multimodal transportation trails that take bikes and walkers and what have you, also mentioned a number of times, and education, of course. And 426 of the respondents took time to fill out the open-ended questions, which is also extraordinary. So what are we recommending to you? Investments in infrastructure, of course, ranked number one. And we are recommending, as a group, that we fund the $1.75 million for broadband. And we are committed. We started this in 2015 and engaged Easton Utilities through an RFI process, and are committed to seeing that every person in this county has access to broadband. And so we're going to plant our flag hard, and we're going to plant it here and ask for $1.75 million for broadband. I think Hugh has done a really good job of explaining what that money would be for. We're also recommending $105,000 for the Chesapeake Center. They have a failing septic system. There are no other funds at this time to replace that. They're pumping and hauling. Some of the members of that organization are here tonight to support this request. So we think this supports a nonprofit and helps the environment. So we're asking for $105,000 to replace their septic system.
To hook it to the county sewer system.
To hook it to the county sewer system. This is why Mr. Lesher is going to help me out tonight, and Mr. Sand. Investments in public health, we're recommending $1 million to be put toward the building of the 911 center in the North County, and the backup 911 center to build a BMS station there. And this will offset the cost that's already, you'll already see in the capital improvement projects for your budget. An additional $300,000 for an ambulance for the Department of Emergency Services, and $500,000 for a fire company grant. We know that the pandemic has hurt the fire companies. They're essential to our county, and we're going to ask you to put $500,000 aside for a grant fund for them to be able to apply for equipment and other needs that can be, that this fund can be used for.
And this would be a two-year funding opportunity
Yes.
to provide equipment. It's specific to equipment for the fire companies.
Yes. Investments for the public good, $250,000 toward a nonprofit grant fund. We think this could be low, but it's about double of what we already had for a grant program from DHCD late last year. And so we thought that we would fund it at this level, see what the needs are. Preference will be given to those who help those who are underserved. We also have asked for $150,000 for the food banks. This continues our efforts to feed the hungry. That has come through the Emergency Operations Center, and the food banks would be able to replenish their shelves. And it is a multi-year grant that they would be able to take advantage of for their needs, and also if they have equipment needs, because some of the organizations, I believe, have some equipment needs. And we're recommending $50,000 for the Talbot County Free Library. This is an anchor institution that serves all the people, and I believe that they have requested money for a new audio system or AV system for the library, and we're making a recommendation that we fund $50,000 from the ARPA money. And then Talbot County Government. We're recommending $160,000 for cybersecurity upgrades, and this would be through our IT department. You hear it every single day in the news. Cybersecurity is an issue and an increasing issue throughout the pandemic. And $245,000 for administrative costs. This covers some salaries, but also some other things that have been, including our survey, would be covered by these administrative funds. And I think it actually should be, to come out even, should be $235. But we're recommending a total of $4.5 million for the first round. We did want to hold money in reserve. We tried to focus on the things that we had firm figures on, that we know our people have asked for, and that we're prepared to implement now. And so that leaves $2.7 million in reserve for additional funding recommendations at a later date.
Question, the last thing you had for the 235 or the 245 administrative costs, they're okay with some of the money, grant money going to salaries and things like?
Oh, absolutely. That is an allowable expenditure and administrative cost for any grant. And of course, we have a grants person on staff to handle these things. We have been sitting through the Federal Treasury webinars to make sure that all of the things that we have recommended are allowable expenditures, and this in fact is.
Thank you.
One last thing, I put together this little word cloud for you. So I said we had been thoughtful and deliberate and thorough in our recommendations. Well, I was very, very pleased to see that in our survey, our people were thoughtful and respectful and thorough in their recommendations. And I took some of the words straight from the survey. People recognize that this is transformational money, that we should make bold investments that move the county forward, that benefit everyone. It's once in a lifetime opportunity to be a driving force for change and to impact the lives of our citizens. And your task force who've worked on this for a number of months now, believe that these recommendations are sound, and we're asking you to approve these expenditures.
Mr. Lesher?
Cassandra, thank you very much for this clear presentation. Thanks to the whole staff committee for all the work. Ken for doing the work, making sure that everything that was being put forward was indeed eligible under the federal guidelines for this. An awful lot of staff work has gone into the vetting of this and to getting these numbers to where we are. I think it's really important too that we're not at this point seeking to commit all of the funds, that we're holding something in reserve, both for needs that we know are out there but we don't yet have solid numbers for. But also for projects that we haven't yet identified. We know that this is a one-time opportunity. We should not be spending this on funds that will on programs that will require follow-up funding. These are largely capital items. These are one-time items. These are infusions that are in some cases intended to compensate for the impacts of the pandemic. I think really all of these are intended to compensate for the impacts of the pandemic and to be able to move us forward. And this is the way these funds can be broadly applied, and where we have the liberty to allocate them is. It's a one-time opportunity, and we need to be very careful about how this is done, and so I thank the staff committee for bringing us to this point.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lesher, for leading this, and Cassandra and the entire group that worked on this. And, I don't know how many other communities did the amount of effort that we did, that you did, to really identify the needs, not just what we think the needs are, but what the community thinks the needs are. So I really hope that other communities did the same thing. But I think it was a few weeks ago, I'm not sure which call or whatever we were on, talking about the fact that the response that we got, because I believe this was it the whole Eastern Shore or a regional thing, and most of the responses were from Talbot County?
No, that's a different survey. That's our business sentiment survey. These are all from Talbot County. Although there were some, there's a small number who are not residents of Talbot County, but I believe those are second homeowners, because we distributed this through our networks.
So not only did we do one survey well, we did two surveys well.
Surveys well.
And you must have been baking cookies. No, with you it's pie. I know that.
That's right.
But to have that kind of an input and just, the open-ended questions and all of that, it's just amazing. I know we have all these love fests up here, but we truly are appreciative of all of our staff and volunteers, and I think all supportive of all of the things that you've mentioned here. So thank you so much for putting all that together.
Thank you. I do think this is an extraordinary document when you have time to leaf through it. There's a lot of information in here, and I want to thank our citizens for taking the time to respond to the survey and to help us make the decisions. Because, you know, it's really not easy to make choices when they're all good choices.
Yeah, I would really like to make sure that the community knows how well all these open-ended questions were answered. I was just trying to read through them today and hearing all the different people, seeing all the different needs. This survey is incredibly valuable, and I hope it gets applied to many different things.
Mr. DeVelio, I agree. I think that while we implemented this survey for the distribution of ARPA, this can serve us in terms of measuring need in Talbot County that can go far beyond the scope of the $7.2 million that's been allocated to us through this particular federal program.
And we will post this online and make sure that people have access to it.
Okay. Mr. Pack?
Yeah, great work. I probably want to look at some of these in a little bit more detail, so I'm not prepared to move forward this evening.
Okay.
Some of them I could probably say yes to tonight, but others I want to look at a little bit closer. But I agree with the fact that surveys are always a good way of getting a pulse check. I was remarking earlier when Charlene was here regarding the survey that she did down in the Bay 100 area when we were putting together the intergenerational center, because you want to make sure that you're checking back in with the citizens as far as what they want to see happen. So, well done, and I haven't had a chance to look at that document either, so I'll scan that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I do have one question. And we just had
Yep.
Hugh and Eastern Utilities up here, and they said time was of the essence as far as plugging that $1.75 million. Do we need to take some action this evening on that?
I would recommend that we do that, and I would ask Mr. Clark about the other infrastructure item, the sewer item, whether there's a particular urgency that we should be moving forward on that as well.
While Mr. Clark comes up, Mr. Pack, I have the same reservations that you had.
I would like us, Laura. I mean, the urgency is not immediate. You know,
But-
I mean, I think we can certainly do something within the next week or two.
Sorry, I had a but.
A but.
But I'm
Let
going
me
to ask
stop.
that we try to move forward on a couple of these big issue tickets
If we-
tonight, because there are some that I think are clear-cut needs. When we heard things of saving the environment, providing infrastructure, health benefits, the Chesapeake Center connecting to that sewer line is something that is just invaluable to that organization. And I'm not one to allow septic systems to just sit there failing and polluting the environment. And I can't think of many organizations like the Chesapeake Center that provide such a great benefit to Talbot County that I would like to jump right on, as well as the infrastructure for the broadband. Those are two that I would like to knock out tonight if we could, if not a couple more.
Is that a motion for those two?
Could we also do the one for the fire companies, the equipment for the fire companies?
Is that
That's $500,000. If we're not comfortable, that's actually a 2-year commitment. If we want to just bite off the first-year commitment, we could do the first $250,000 for the first year of this to the fire companies and revisit the rest. But I think that's also, there's an urgency there as well.
Right, and that's part of our budget. So as we're going through the budget, and we had a budget work session earlier today and talking about the fire companies, and we actually brought that up. So I think
Right.
that's something we should try to get out of the way, so that we can move forward with the budget.
due to technology, I ask that you make the motion.
Was this the $500,000 that was in that budget line that we talked about earlier?
No, so this would provide in part coverage for that. This would open the door to allow us to work with the Firemen's Association to offset their request and to address and to create a process by which they could spend any additional funds. So what is eligible in their request we could cover with this, and what is not we can't, and then with what we can't, and there are additional funds, it's an opportunity for fire companies. I would work with the association to come up with a grant process.
Yeah.
So if you budgetarily allocate the money out of the ARPA, that would allow me to engage the fire service, the association, to begin a process.
Okay, and I think I left my budget papers in the back.
221,000
How much was it?
was their request over last year's, and that's an operational request, all fire
But then there was
companies.
a supplemental request,
The supplemental's 221,000.
220. Would this cover that 200?
In
That was
part.
a question I had earlier.
In part, because what we have to do is we have to go through that and see what is eligible and what is not eligible.
Right, and again, my hesitation is for these kind of questions to be vetted out, so we can know exactly what it is that we can and cannot do. Not that I don't want to spend the money, I just want to make sure, I mean, yes, broadband, we've been fighting about broadband forever. So that's a lower hanging fruit, the 1.7. But there's some other ones I would like to just to get some more information on before we proceed with them.
So are you okay with a
I'm okay with 1.7. I think the 1.7 continued what we were initially trying to do with the broadband, yeah.
Right.
I
So,
don't know why that's talking.
we got a motion.
Well,
Go ahead.
let me hold on. Let me turn back to the staff and ask if, Mr. Clark, on the Chesapeake Center one, if we approve this tonight as opposed to 3 weeks from now at our next meeting, will that in fact be able to accelerate the
Yes, sir.
connection?
Yes, sir, and they're currently pumping and hauling right now, which is, it's very costly to do that.
sooner
so.
the better on that.
Was it a failed septic system or breaking?
They
were never
actually, they have a
connected?
failed septic system right now, and they're currently pumping and hauling, and this would actually make the connection to the line in Maryland Route 33.
Yeah.
They're part of Resolution 235. So this is basically to get them connected. We are, what we need to do now is need to get the contractor lined up, and we as well as get the public works agreement signed between us and the Chesapeake Center, so that's the game plan right now.
I think, Mr. Clark, you probably have sought other grant opportunities.
We have. We looked at bay restoration funds, and
You
we're
did?
unable to use bay restoration funds at this time.
Okay.
And let me just ask the staff too, particularly those of you who've been on the committee, if there are any other items that we need to earmark that have that urgent. I know a number of these things, 3 weeks delay, 5 weeks delay is not going to make a difference, but if there are any others where that will make a difference.
My only other recommendation, other than what we talked about, is to send a message that you'd like to allocate that money toward the fire companies and allow us to start coming up with a process. The items with regard to the county, we can certainly dig into those and talk about the merits of them.
Right.
Come back to the next meeting.
And that would include the cybersecurity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, what can,
Well, in that case, I will move that we approve allocations from our American Rescue Plan Act funds of $1.75 million for the broadband project, $105,000 for the Chesapeake Center, and $500,000 for equipment for the fire companies.
I'll second that.
and that, okay, discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, and that 500,000, you said you're going to verify whether or not those were the same figures we talked about earlier today? Or, you know,
So again, I'll try to be clear. So the fire companies this year, the council provides operational support to the fire companies.
Sure.
And this year, they've asked for an increase.
Right, saw that.
And that increase totals
100 and something thousand.
221,000.
220,000, okay.
Now, what we have to do is look at how much of that is eligible to be covered by the ARPA funds each year. And whatever is not covered by the ARPA funds is an opportunity for the fire company to meet some of their needs, equipment-wise. So, we're not looking to just cover it'd be great if we could cover the whole thing. And if we can, we can. If we can't, we'll cover what we can, and then we'll identify opportunities for the fire
I
company.
mean, long as it's not debt service or replenishing services, then you would.
Of course not.
Right, then you would think all of it would be covered, the whole 200,000. You would think, I mean, it's not to refund for taxes, it's not to pay pensions, so it's operational dollars. So that, if that's the case, I would certainly support that.
Okay.
Well, didn't they have a supplemental as well, or no? Okay, okay.
Okay.
I thought they had some more money they wanted. Okay. So
You right down there?
225. Yeah,
Good.
I'm
Okay,
writing it
good.
down.
He's writer. Okay, so we have a motion and second, Madam Secretary, to do the 1.75 for broadband,
Right.
the 105,000 for Chesapeake Center, and the $500,000 for the fire department.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Okay.
And so we'll add that more detailed discussion in our upcoming
Right.
budget meeting, so you'll be prepared by next meeting.
That sounds great.
Thank you all for your attention to this. I think this is really important. This is frankly transformational for our community.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lesher, for your leadership and your whole team that helped us. Thank you, Cassandra.
Cassandra.
Okay. You're on deck.
Okay.
You're ready to
thank you.
go.
Mr. Council President,
Yep.
members of the council, your county manager report.
Okay.
So I have 3 board and committee appointment requests for you this evening. The first one is the Agricultural Land Preservation Advisory Board, requesting the reappointment of Glenn Gannon to that board.
So moved.
Second?
Madam Secretary, we've got a motion and second. Call the vote.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Next item is the Commission on Aging, requesting the reappointment of Marion Donahue, Lee Newcomb, and Ellen Taggart to that
So moved.
commission.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
The next is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. The Town of Easton is recommending the appointment of Tom Klein as their representative to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
And Mr. Clark, you want to come forward? We have a request from the Department of Public Works to award bid number 2104, Talbot County Senior Center parking lot expansion. As you read in your agenda packet, requesting council approval to award bid 2104 to the low bidder, Duval Brothers Incorporated, in the amount of $129,220. A total of 3 bids were received. There are sufficient funds in the budget for this project, and Mr. Clark is here to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Is this is just paving?
This is actually, we've bought land, and ultimately, we're building a new, parking lot, an extension to
center.
their parking lot, to the senior center. So it's basically a new parking lot that's next to their existing parking lot.
Expand the parking
It is-
capacity
it is
for the senior
expanded.
center.
The area next door?
Yeah, I knew that. I was just surprised by one of the bidders.
Yeah. And it's also stormwater management. We had to do stormwater management, a pond and whatnot.
Okay, good. Madam Secretary, we've got a motion and second. Could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
One of the tougher ones for you this evening, wasn't it? The next item I have is a request from the Finance Office, and this is the third step in a 3-step process with regard to the Bell Filter Press that you passed the administrative resolution on this evening. The Finance Office is requesting approval from the United States Department of Agriculture loan resolution related to the county's financing of a replacement belt filter press at Region 2, St. Michael's Wastewater Treatment Plant. With the adoption of the administrative resolution earlier this evening, the second step is to approve the Finance Office's request.
So moved.
Second?
Madam Secretary, we've got a motion and second. Could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you, Council. And I ask that Micah Reisher come up. Micah, thank you. We have a request this evening from Easton Airport for the approval of airport consultant AECom price proposal for general professional and engineering services, a full program design improvements to runway safety area and runway 4-22 extension program. As you read in your agenda packet, requesting council approval of AECom's price proposal in the amount of $1,885,261 to design the full program for the runway 422 safety improvements, FAA AIP, Aviation Improvement Plan, is that right?
Right, the airport improvement program, that's the grant fund.
Okay, and the actual cost of the Easton Airport will only be $188,526.10. And that can be supported by the airport's budget, and Mike is here to talk to you about that. And that will roll into the next request if you want to combine the two, and that is they are requesting well, actually, I did it in reverse.
That's fine, yeah, you did. So the big picture here is, this is our annual submission to FAA for the AIP funds. So we're requesting it's a $1.8 million grant request. So we need your approval to submit the application, and then if approved, they'll make the offer, and we'd also like to be able to accept that grant if they offer it to us. And then only contingent upon that, once we have the offer, we would like to move forward with AECOM's price proposal. So we will not be hitting the go button on $1.8 million until we're assured that we have the grant money flowing in.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
All right.
Can I just want to make a comment. Don't leave. Sit back down. No, this is one grant program, and the way this all works, and I'd like to remind people, is that this is not taxpayer dollars. When we get grants for the airport, they are from user fees, people who are actually out flying, and part of your airplane ticket that you pay goes to that. So this it's a completely different type of grant, which makes a lot more sense to me. It's actual user fees. And then, the fact that the airport is a true enterprise department for us, that again, there's no taxpayer dollar subsidies in this, that it's all generated from the revenue that you bring in at the airport. So that's why I love the airport so much. You do a great job, and your predecessor did as well. But this is one thing that's not a burden on the taxpayer at all, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Price, and you're right. It is always important to point out that these are from the Aviation Trust Fund, well-established, so no federal tax dollars, or these are all from user fees, and we always like to remind people that your airport has been self-sustaining since 1992, so.
Nice.
Good job, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Have a good evening.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll have Preston Pepper, your Director of Parks and Recreation, come forward. He's requesting to award bid 2109, Master Plan Bill Burton Fishing Pier State Park. He's requesting that the bid 2109 be awarded to the low bidder, A. Morton Thomas, in the amount of $55,464, and allow staff to negotiate best and final price to meet the budget set forth, as well as the scope of work. The total of 8 bids were received, and the budget for this is $50,000.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion second. Can you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
All right.
Thank you. And then, Preston, did you have everything to add?
I knew that.
And the final item I have is an announcement of the Regional Agricultural Scrap Tire Event hosted by Midshore Regional Landfill in Caroline County, which will be on March 21st through 25th, and again on March 28th through April 1st, 2022. And that concludes your county manager.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Yep.
I wanted to make that announcement, and there's one more item that I have. Patrick is here, and he's requesting that you approve a letter be sent to the Department of the Environment in response to their letter of February 3rd, 2022, requesting clarification of the county's position regarding the proposed Lakeside Trappe East project. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick for any additional information on that.
Yes, so at the council's direction, I drafted a letter in response to Lee Curry's February 3rd letter explaining what happened with respect to resolution numbers 308 and 313 at the March 8th meeting. I also noted the introduction of resolution 327. Before the meeting, I spoke with Council Vice President Lesher and Councilmember Price. They requested that I make a couple of revisions to the letter, which I had no issue with. The first was to delete the word final in the second paragraph on page 1, and then to strike the first 2 sentences on the second full paragraph on page 2.
You might have just send it back out again, man.
It's just 2 sentences.
You're going to take action again on 308 and 313?
Yeah, you might have just rewrite this and send it back out again.
You lost me.
They want to take action on 308 and 313 again.
No.
No, just say the
change the
council took
substantive
action
meaning of the
instead of
letter,
saying
you
took
might as well
final.
rewrite it and send it back out again.
And I'm sorry, so you want to do that, and then what was the other one? The other change?
To strike the first 2 sentences in the second full paragraph on the second page.
I make a motion that we send the letter as drafted.
Second.
Madam Secretary, we've got a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Mr. DeGiglio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Nay.
Ms. Price?
No.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
And then I do have one more announcement. The Midshore Household Hazard Waste Drop-Off Day will be Saturday, April 2nd at 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Queen Anne's County Public Works Facility, 312 Safety Drive, off Maryland Route 301 in Centerville. Rain or shine. Any questions, please contact the Maryland Environmental Service at 443-685-4073 or the Department of Public Works at 410-770-8170. And that does include conclude the county manager report.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Stamp. Did a good job. Appreciate it. Okay. Next on the agenda is the public comments. Have any public comments? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Want me to keep trying?
Yeah, sure. Oh, okay.
Good evening, Council. Dave Stepp from Eastern Maryland. Thank you for your time tonight. Members of the Talbot County Council, thank you for your time and attention as well as for your service to our county and community. As already discussed this evening, you were charged with creating a new article in Article 5 to the Talbot County Code establishing a Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee. This action is, of course, in response to Maryland HB 670, more commonly referred to as Maryland's Police Reform Bill. Please remember that your actions moving forward on this topic should reflect how your bipartisan constituents in Talbot County feel. In recent chronological order, Talbot County voters have spoken, and this council has enacted the following legislation. Number 1, question D on the 2020 ballot, being passed by a solid 59.5% majority vote to temporarily increase taxes above the tax revenue cap in Talbot County. This action has and will continue to positively benefit our Sheriff's Department as well as our Department of Emergency Services. Number 2, this council's funding of LEOPS last year, which has led to Talbot County being able to retain our existing men and women in uniform long-term, as well as attract our next generation of law enforcement talent. 3, this council's passing of Talbot County Bill 1492 last year, allowing for an increase in our pay for our sheriff-elect in 2022. This action puts our Talbot County Sheriff's pay more in line with other sheriff's pay in the state of Maryland. Based upon the wonderful and positive policing history we have had here in Talbot County, I, as well as many other Talbot County residents, feel that the Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee are simply not needed. It creates problems where problems do not exist. This board and committee will hurt our officers' ability to police, it creates blurry use of force thresholds, and it removes the ability of local law enforcement leadership to appropriately discipline their officers. Additionally, it will be an unnecessary tax burden on the citizens of Talbot County in the form of additional officer training, lawyers' fees, judges' fees, and court costs. Those additional tax burdens could run well into the six-figure range for the Talbot County taxpayer. That being said, seating this board and committee in any way that goes against how the citizens of Talbot County already feel would be a mistake. The state of Maryland continues their attack on law enforcement to this day. I encourage the council, as well as every Maryland citizen, to research Senate Bill 896. If Senate Bill 896 passes, it will further remove the ability for local and even elected law enforcement leadership to manage and discipline within their respective departments. Now that the time is upon you to sit this board and committee, I'd like to revisit my comments from last year to the council, which still apply today. My asks verbatim were to please utilize common sense when sitting this board and please choose unbiased, responsible, non-politically charged individuals who not only understand law and order, but also understand the daily sacrifices and split-second decisions that our men and women in uniform have to face daily. Thank you again, Council, for your time, attention, service, and most importantly, action.
Great. Thanks a lot, appreciate it. Okay, the next gentleman up is Mr. Patrick Ruff.
I believe he spoke earlier during Mary Kay's presentation.
Oh, okay, okay.
Center Director.
Okay, no problem. Yes, come on up, Hugh.
I hope it goes without saying, but thank you very much for your
Yes.
consideration of the ARPA fund allocation. We use it well and make you proud that you made that allocation. And thank you for your prompt action on it tonight. It really does help us to be able to move that along, so thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay. We're down to council comments.
I'm ready.
You ready?
Yes. So I'm going to give you a little update from Annapolis. I want to start with one of our local bills that we asked Senator Eckert to sponsor for us, SB 996, which was the correctional officers bill, which is the authorization to apply that we needed that. Senator Eckert asked if I would sit next to her as she did this bill to the Pension Subcommittee in Budget and Tax. We did that last week. It passed immediately out of the subcommittee and full approval from the Budget and Tax Committee. So that was a really good thing for the county. I was happy to be able to sit next to our senator and do that and have that pass so swiftly out. And I expect that it will have no problem getting out of the full.
It passed the Senate unanimously this afternoon.
Alrighty then, so we even have that, yay. Sometimes, you talk about all the counties, but it was really great to be able to do something that was really just affected us. And the bills stopped coming about 3 weeks ago, and we've been furiously following all of the hearings and testifying at hearings. The highway user revenues, the hearings were amazing. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, and we had probably 20 county elected officials. Almost, I think, every county executive came. They ushered us in first. They took the hearing first, and we were a force to be reckoned with, sitting in person in the Senate, and we all testified. And you couldn't have written the script any better because we all had something different to say. While we all gave our county numbers, the pieces that we all spoke on, were different, and it was a great hearing. The next day, it was most of the same ones of us, but it was a House virtual hearing, and while it went well, it didn't feel the same, not being able to testify, in person. And I will tell you that the House has made, and I'm not going to be shy about saying this, mincemeat of that bill. They went up by a couple tenths of a percent over the next 3 years to go. We are currently, the counties are at 3.2%, where we used to be over 15%. And so they got us up to 3.6%, and then we're going to fall off the cliff again. And for those who've been following this, there's a cliff effect where what little bit of funding we've increased from 1.5% to 3% stops in 2 more fiscal years, and we revert back to lose all the funding that we had gained. And so leadership marched their amendments over to the House, and then so we get basically nothing. And the Senate, from what I understand, Senator McCray, and there was 26 bipartisan sponsors actually on both the House and the Senate, but Senator McCray has been a champion. I don't know if they got it out yet today, but I think they're going to pass out of budget and tax fully intact, which means what we're trying to accomplish right now is to get this to a conference committee. So we're not going to get 100%, but hopefully we're going to get something more than what the House did. And it's a shame when you go and you testify and you hear that, and this is the way it was designed and the way this whole program was built for 40 years. For 40 years we got this funding, and it was supposed to come back before. So I'm kind of passionate about that one, and we're working really, really hard. The EMS bill, which is right now we get $100, but only if we per ambulance ride, but only if we transport to a hospital. It doesn't recognize if we go to an urgent care facility or possibly to a doctor's office or treat on site. And that one has been kind of stuck. We got it out of one side, and I can't remember if we got it out of the Senate or the House. And it's just, they just keep looking at the fact that the fiscal note on it, but what they're not recognizing is the savings. When you don't, the state of Maryland doesn't end up having to pay for the hospital stay, the ER stay. You know, it's a lot less expensive to go to an urgent care or your doc's in or something like that. And so we're working really hard to try to get them to recognize where the savings is. Tomorrow night, since we didn't have our opening session reception, we are doing that tomorrow. Since everything is nice and open and the world is open, that's great. And we're going to definitely be talking to the delegates and senators tomorrow night as we feed them crab cakes and wine and beer. And hopefully we can make a little bit more progress. We're going to get a whole bunch more issue updates, and I'm sure I'll be back at trying to update with you guys. But I wanted to give you the highlights of those two, along with the correctional officers bill.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Price. We really appreciate that good, hard work and all you're doing for us in Talbot County up there. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Mr. Pack.
Well, yeah, I mean, the CORE's bill allowing our local detention center officials to go into the CORE system is going to be really huge. Gentleman mentioned last year this council approving the LEOPS, for our sheriff's deputies. Well, the same thing applies to our detention center workers. We have, you may not realize this, but we have had inmates at that detention center for over 5 years. Over 5 years. And it is only supposed to be an 18-month stay. So we've been holding people for more than 5 years at the detention center. So they're seeing the same class of individual that a state correction officer would see and deal with, and with all the other changes that have come down from Annapolis, House Bill 1116, with the requirements on opioid treatment and those things, the demand is even greater on our correctional officers. So, salute certainly Senator Ackert for pushing this through. Hopefully it will pass the House. I don't think we'll have any issue there, because we need to send a clear signal to our detention center workers that we have their back when it comes to retirement. A 30, 35-year system is not the place to be in when you're dealing with a certain clientele like that. It's just not. So very happy to hear that. Thanks for reporting that, Laura. That really means a lot to me personally. Other than that, great to be back a second time in a row here. I hope this continues on. Great report from Dr. Maguire. It looks like everything is trending down. Looks good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeVillio.
So spring has sprung, the weather is starting to turn. It means that people are going to start taking the covers off their pools, or start shopping to put a pool in, or a dock, or put in the patio, the paver patio out back for people to hang out in. It also means that people are going to start doing renovation projects as the ground's drying out. So to all of those individuals who've been waiting on permits, I'd like to go ahead and apologize to them for not being persuasive enough to end the lakeside discussion when we're directing growth next to a municipality that's going to have 2 ENR wastewater treatment facilities. I can't think of a better scenario. It's across Route 50 because it's farther away from the water, another win. It's in a municipality that needs growth, another win. And the waste is going to be treated to ENR standards, another win, with 2 facilities. And we still have other failing ones. So if you're in Tillman and you're flushing the toilet, I'm sorry, but you're polluting the water worse than what's going on over there. And I haven't taken the time to fix that or address that. I haven't taken the time to meet with planning and zoning and apologize to them for all the extra work that they've had to do to explain to me about the Trappe project. And the hours upon hours that aren't billable that are costing Talbot County a fortune. Our department heads are not cheap, and they're spending a lot of time and a lot of their resources not getting permits issued, which is what their job is. So I apologize for not being a better politician and being able to fix this, but I've got a clear email here from Dan Watson that was dated March 7th at 7:43 in the morning, where Resolution 308, which contained the recession language on our petition from last summer, will be withdrawn or defeated tomorrow night. But don't worry, it served us all very well. It raised Lakeside up as an issue. I kept asking. I had a lot of frustration. What's the issue? Do you not want it? How do you stop it? Nobody told me how to stop it. Nobody who was against it could tell me how to stop it. Nobody could tell me what better way to treat the water than an ENR treatment facility. There isn't anything better. So I'm not real sure what discussions we're going to keep having on this issue, but I'll tell you what, we're going to miss out a lot of pool parties while people are waiting on permits that are already taking 12 weeks and are going to be even longer. So the Talbot County staff, I apologize. To Talbot County residents, I apologize. I'll try to do better.
Thank you, Mr. DeVillio. Mr. Vice President.
I have nothing further for this evening. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to, once again, I want to thank Hugh and your team. You guys have been, really, this is what it's all about. What you guys are doing, what we're doing, working together collaboratively, and, making this happen. I mean, this is huge for Talbot County and the residents. And I can't thank you guys enough for working hard. Pete, your team, and Cassandra, this was a very, very important meeting with all the money that's been handed out. And that's what we're all up here for, to help the citizens live a better life, housing, food, broadband, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And we're all doing good stuff. The last thing I'm going to tell you is a couple weeks ago, Chuck Callahan got engaged. So the way I did it, and I got to tell you guys, because I've been trying to do this now for about a couple years here. So Julie's grandmother turned 100 years old, and I bent down in front of the whole family with her birthday, and right in front of her, turning 100 years old, and did it right in front of my mom. Yeah. So it was great. So just wanted everybody to know, So,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. So, Mr. Lesher, you want to put us away here?
The County Council's next meeting will be held on Tuesday, April 12th, beginning at 6:00 p.m. The council will be convening an open session at 4:30 p.m. and then adjourning into closed session to discuss real estate, legal, and personnel matters as listed on the statement for closing that meeting. The council will be in a closed session on Thursday, March 12th at 4:00 p.m. to discuss personnel matters. The council will be holding budget deliberations on Tuesday, March 29th at 4:00 p.m., Thursday, March 31st at 4:30 p.m., and Tuesday, April 5th at 4:00 p.m. Therefore, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting and reconvene as noted?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please? Aye.
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 Okay, thanks a lot for being here.